One.
Welcome everyone to Police Accountability Board Regular Meeting, Wednesday, June 25th, 2025. Public notice: to access the meeting remotely, join from a PC, Mac, iPad, iPhone, or Android device using the URL in the public agenda packet. If you do not wish for your name to appear on the screen, use the drop-down menu and click on rename to rename yourself to be anonymous. To request to speak, use the raise hand icon on the screen. To join by phone, dial 1-669-900-6833 and enter meeting ID 891-7458-9069. If you wish to comment during the public comment portion of the agenda, press *9 and wait to be recognized. Go to our land acknowledgement. The city of Berkeley recognizes that the community we live in was built on the territory of the Huchun, the ancestral and unceded land of the Chochenyo-speaking Ohlone people, the ancestors and descendants of the sovereign Rona Band of Alameda County. This land was and continues to be of great importance to all of the Ohlone tribes and descendants of the Rona Band. As we begin our meeting tonight, we acknowledge and honor the original inhabitants of Berkeley, the documented 5,000-year history of a vibrant community at the West Berkeley Shamans, and the Ohlone people who have continued to reside in the East Bay. We recognize that Berkeley's residents have and continue to benefit from the use and occupation of this unceded stolen land since the city of Berkeley's incorporation in 1878. As stewards of the laws regulating the city of Berkeley, it is not only vital that we recognize the history of this land, but also recognize the Ohlone people are present members of Berkeley and other East Bay communities today. That will go to agenda item number 1, call to order and roll call.
Thank you, Chair Cayetano. For the record, this meeting was called to order at 6:31 p.m. I'll now proceed with roll call. Chair Cayetano.
Here.
Vice Chair Wilson. And the Vice Chair informed us that she'll be participating remotely, but at this time she is not on the Zoom call, and she'll be participating on this pause provision. Board Member Calavita.
Here.
Board Member Lethwich.
Here.
Board Member Williams.
Here.
Board Member Wells.
Here.
Board Member Edmonds.
Here.
And Board Member Charco.
Here.
Okay, we have a forum with 7 members present.
What is the current motion pass?
To pass the motion, we would need 5 votes because we have 8 appointees. Okay. And on behalf of the ODPA, we have Director Aguilar, Data Analyst IMD, our investigative clerk Daniel Weinberg, and myself, Jose Murillo. We'll be doing a formal introduction later, but we do have our youth work citizens with us tonight as well. On behalf of the BPD, we have Deputy Chief Tate and Lieutenant Rigo. With that, Chair, we have a quorum.
Great, thanks, Jose. Let's go to item 2, approval of the agenda. Are there any revisions to the agenda proposed? Okay.
I'm ready to approve the agenda.
Second.
Sorry, could we repeat that second one more time?
I second it.
Perfect, thank you. Seeing or hearing no objections, the agenda, the motion to approve the agenda carries.
Great. Go to item number 3, public comment.
Okay, thank you, Chair Cayetano. As a reminder, speakers are generally allotted up to 3 minutes, but may be allotted less time if there are many speakers. They may comment on any matter within the board's jurisdiction at this time, except confidential personal matters. And as a special note, I would like to note that if you're here for the policy review scheduled for later on in the agenda, those also have a dedicated public comment portion for the so with that said, I'll start with those physically present before moving on to our virtual attendees. One moment while I get the timer on the clock. Okay.
Hello, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
When last I was in here on June 11th, I misspoke and I wanted to come in and correct what I had said. Because I earnestly believed at the time when I saw the police officer punch Draco in the face. However, I reviewed the video again after speaking to Draco, who said that the police officer did no such thing, and I could not see how I saw it in the first place. And this doesn't mean that everything else I said on that day wasn't true. the folks at the encampment still feel like the officers were acting outside the bounds of the law in the performance of the sweep without having to provide a notice, and they do feel disheartened. But I won't bear false witness, so I wanted to come up and say that, let you know. I'm sure you've privy to the fact from watching the videos yourself. On the rectify that. Thank you.
Okay. Any additional public comment from those physically present? Okay, seeing none. I'll now move on to our virtual attendees. Okay. Jennifer, you've been granted permission to speak.
Hi, thanks. This is Jennifer too. I work with the American Friends Service Committee, and we monitor and advocate around police demilitarization around the whole state of California, and including in Berkeley. And I just wanted to comment and encourage this board to protect the local ordinance that you had that the city of Berkeley had passed a number of years ago, promoting transparency around police use of military equipment. This is this is just something that the people of Berkeley really deserve transparency on. When I was not present myself at the homeless encampment sweep, but I understand that military equipment was deployed, including use of kinetic impact projectiles shot into a tent. Obviously, that's not something that can be aimed at someone and could have been very dangerous and harmful. And this is the kind of transparency that the people of Berkeley need. And that's why when the state legislature passed state law AB 481 and it became law in 2021, a lot of that state law looked to Berkeley as an example. So I just wanted to encourage this body to continue your support for the local ordinance, and let you know that I am listening and watching. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our next speaker, Barb Antwell. You've been granted permission to speak.
Yeah, hi there, Barb Atwell. I'm with the Berkeley Friends Meeting, and I just wanted to add, I'm also working with the American Friends Service Committee, but I represent the Berkeley Friends Meeting, and we just wanted to make sure that you all know that we're opposed to the repeal of the city's ordinance on military equipment passed in 2021. The ordinance provides important transparency and oversight on militarized policing. And I know that this body has done excellent work in making sure that the reports are accurate and sent on to the city council, and I do so appreciate that. But there are elements of the ordinance that are really, really important and need to be retained. There are 4 of them, and I will speak as succinctly as possible. But the first one is the report on the deployment of weapons. So this is a provision that defines deployment, and because the law AB 481 requires reporting on the use of weapons, which is not defined in the law, most agencies around the state only report on assault rifles and projectile launchers that have been fired. So this ordinance is clear, and the intent of military policing is definitely defined well in the current ordinance. So the second item is how many uses of controlled equipment were in service of a warrant and the areas in Berkeley where they were used. So AB 481 has no such requirement. So Berkeley is going above and beyond, which I think is excellent. The third piece is that the requirement before acquiring new types of equipment is it needs to submit a statement assessing, and this is the critical part, potential impacts on the safety and civil liberties, mitigation of adverse impacts, alternatives, and disclosure of third-party providers. So AB 481 does not have those requirements, and Berkeley does. So those are basically a role model for the entire state. to do it properly. The last one is the review by the Police Accountability Board of annual reports on the use of military equipment, and that designation as independent oversight body is absolutely critical. I feel like pulling that back is basically going back about 5 years, and I really hope that that does not happen. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. And Ilana Arba, you've been granted permission to speak.
Hi, good evening. I'm out here on University Avenue, so it might be a little loud, but can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, you can hear me. Okay. Thanks again. Thanks as always for your service to our city. I am not surprised and appalled at what the city council did last night in not in cutting funding to the Police Accountability Board and cutting or freezing a couple of positions, I think, while over the past 5 years, I'm sure nothing was cut from the police department. And not only was it not cut, it was increased to over $100 million in the past 5 years. I don't know if, because a lot of y'all may not have been paying attention because some of you are new to this board. This board wasn't even in existence 5 years ago. The police budget has gone up by 30%, $30 million, $30 million. And they cut like $1 million or something from you all. I don't know the details of the $30 million when what has happened to crime? It's been flat. It's been relatively flat. This is ridiculous. This is like the ridiculous increase from 2% to 5% that NATO just agreed to, that you all probably know about. So the militarization of our city, the militarization of our world leads to what happened last weekend. We don't want that. So we do want, last week, the chief was talking about the duplicative nature of having to do the Berkeley ordinance for the military equipment, as well as the state of California. Well, then let's not make it duplicative. The 4 items that the speaker before me just mentioned, have it be a report that is not duplicative. That's simple. We can solve that problem. And we need to be a leader at this moment. And it was already spoken that Berkeley's ordinance is being replicated around the state and hopefully around the country, perhaps even. So we need more oversight, not less. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for having on the agenda tonight. I know you're going to be talking about the raid from that happened 3 weeks ago. So that's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Chair Cayetano, at this time, I see no additional hands raised, but we have one more speaker.
Thank you very much. I just want to add my voice to those you've already heard on the importance of the local ordinance in regards to reporting on equipment. And as others have said, there are things that are in our local ordinance that are not state ordinance, and those things are very important, and we really don't need to lose those. It's really important to keep those. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, Chair, we have no additional hands raised.
Great. Thanks, everyone. That will go to agenda item 4, approval of the minutes, June 11, 2025 meeting. Does anyone have any revisions?
We move to approve. I'll second.
Are there any objections on the motion to approve the minutes? Seeing or hearing none, the motion is approved.
Okay. That will go to agenda item 5, office staff report.
Good evening, Sir Chair, board members, welcome back. To see everybody here is beautiful to see everybody lined up. It's pretty exciting. Colleagues, members of the public, and our newest team members, which I'm gonna announce shortly. We're really happy and excited. We've been in the process for the past 2 years, I would say now, coordinating with the city to establish a youth works site over here, and we've finally been able to lock that in. We got the opportunity to host 5 students this summer. I'm really excited about that. They started this week. We're getting them acquainted with the work that we do in the office. They've been reviewing some materials, going over the charter. Watching some of the meeting videos from last week. So we're really excited about that, and making sure that we're doing our contribution to the community and helping the youth and build them up for the future. And today, we're gonna allow them to introduce themselves, and we're both working on their soft skills and their public speaking skills today. So they're gonna go ahead and line up and introduce themselves. They're gonna say their name, their school, and one thing that they hope to gain during the summer.
Nice to meet you all. My name is Jenna Khan and I attend Berkeley Independent Studies. And one thing I hope to gain from this experience and this internship is guidance towards what I want to pursue, what I want to do with life. So, thank you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Hi, my name is Mina Fitzpatrick. I go to Lipscomb High School and I'm excited to gain work experience and like just learn more about the city of Berkeley. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dana Corey. I go to Berkeley High and I would like to gain experience and use it in the future.
Hi, my name is Lorraine. I go to Berkeley Technology Academy and I'm getting leadership skills.
Well, they have a very structured program that we're working with Youth Works. We're gonna introduce them to trauma-informed services. We're gonna discuss ways to incorporate it. There's a lot of brochures that we've been talking about with the board and getting the community more acquainted with the work they do. So we're going to do an assessment at the end of this week to give them assignments throughout the summer. They'll be here with us until I believe the first or second week of August. So we're excited about this partnership, and one more starting next week, so we want to see forth. I want to provide two quick updates on just routine matters and then another bigger update. But I had the opportunity to meet with DC Tate this past week or last week, but time is flying by this few days. But we had the opportunity to discuss a way to do our policy transmissions after the PAB reviews them. We want to make sure that the PAB is getting a response back. One of the things we discussed, it may or may not be feasible to stick to a particular time frame. So in the last report that we brought to you, there was interest of getting a response within 30 days, but right now managing different workloads. So just want to be transparent with the board that you may or may not get a response. They're going to prioritize based on their workload, but also what the subject matter is. So sometimes it may be achievable, sometimes it may be a little bit longer. DC Tate is here also, so she can expand on that if she wants to. And then the controlled equipment update, we do have that agenda, so reserve my commentary until we get to that point. But I did have the opportunity to meet with Arlo this past week as well. And I just want to do almost now a hard pivot. As you may have heard and was mentioned in public comment, there was a significant budgetary decision made last night by City Council. They made the decision to freeze two of our positions. Right now, we have three permanent vacancies. So we're funded for 2 investigators and three analysts. And right now we have one of the analyst positions, an admin analyst, vacant, and 2 of the investigators. So what they decided was to freeze 1 investigators and 1 of the administrative analysts. So that means we'll be for this upcoming fiscal year, we'll have 1 investigator, myself, our policy analyst, and our data analyst. And there was some confusion going into this process. On May 20th, the council alerted the community and the charter officers that there was gonna be a need to review our budgets, everybody's budgets, to see what can be adjusted. On May 21st, I wrote back a detailed memo where I explained our operational impact if we were to do that hiring freeze. And I made some recommendations that we get exempted from that, or that we adopt the city manager's criteria for hiring freeze, which allows for some exemptions. So neither of those recommendations were taken, and and the council made the decision to free some of these positions. I did express some legal and operational concerns with that. I do believe it impacts us negatively, in a way that it frustrated the charter. And in the absence of clear direction, I was still continuing to do some of the hires, so we're in active, process for hiring some of these, vacancies. So now with this new directive, though, we really have to critically look at what we can accomplish. And this is a continuation of last meeting when we were talking about the workload. So at that time, I was unwilling to commit to adjusting our workload because it was theoretical that we were gonna not have the opportunity filled with our vacancies. But now that we know what the resource we have, we are gonna have to make some decisions operationally. We are gonna have to make recommendations for admin closures because we are gonna time out some of these cases, and we'll also bring forth some recommendations on the policy review closures that we are going to recommend to you. Obviously, it'll be subject to your approval, but it's not agendized for tonight. I'm just giving you a heads up about that. But I do want the community to know, we remain committed to doing this work with integrity. We aren't the only agency, obviously, that's dealing with these kind of decisions. I've looked at other models, New York, last year adopted some language they refer to as, SRAD, a strategic resource allocation, disposition. And that's when they affirmatively tell the community members, we can't take this complaint, if they make criteria of which complaints they can't take. I'm not saying we're there yet, but we certainly are going to have to admin close some cases. We do have some serious misconduct cases, so obviously we'll do our assessment. We'll try to prioritize some of the heavy subject matter cases and then try to be honest with our ability to carry them out in a way that's objective and with integrity. I want to, but on a lighter note, too, on a full circle of life and bureaucracy, some of the monies that were being redistributed, they do fund programs like Youth Works. So we are happy that the council is supporting programs like that. But it is unfortunate that we can't meet some of our charter needs. But I'll stop here, Mr. Chair, if you have any questions.
Do any of the board members have questions for the director or comments?
I have a question about, given this new budgetary reality, we've talked in the past about interns from Cal facilitating some of this workload.
Yes.
Could you give us an update on where that stands and how they can be useful?
Yeah, so there's part of a big consideration with HR about what that relationship looks like. So that's why it's been a little bit difficult, and there was some transition even with HR. We do have a new HR director, which she met with this week. And I think we can start revisiting some of these things. We do have a selection for a Cal student to be full year next upcoming year. But the problem is, if it's going to be some interns that are paid, just don't have the ability to support them, and that may have to be negotiated with the city's policies, because for the most part, the interns are paid, and that's why the coordination with HR happens.
Any other questions?
Following up on that, how does that work with the confidentiality needs of many of our cases?
Yeah, so we're very mindful about the assignment of what we do, and we should ensure that we keep that integrity at the baseline. All interns are informed about basic confidentiality, but we don't, in the past, the interns that we have used thus far have done public facing work, so that's not something that we have had to deal with at this time.
Thanks for your update, Director. I just want to say, I know that our board relies very heavily on your office. We don't have a professional staff. I know that I rely very heavily on you, and I make a lot of demands of you. when it comes to policy work, and we have a lot of priorities on this board and organizing them, and we'll work with you in light of the new reality. And, you know, I think it's really sad that last night the council voted to approve an additional $15 million for the police department and decided to freeze 2 essential positions for us when we don't have any professional staff to support our work. So I think that disparity will have impacts on our future work, but we'll try to do our best, you know, in light of the current reality. But thank you for your efforts, and we're here to support you just as much as you're here to support us. So thank you. Okay, with that, we'll go to the chair and board members' reports. I'll start first. First is welcome to our new board member. I actually don't even know how to pronounce your last name, so it's
Buzzwell Chargo.
Buzzwell Chargo. Nice to meet you. Sorry that I wasn't able to be here at your initiation last meeting. We made a commitment at the beginning of this year to try to have a full cohort, which is 9 people, and now we're at 8. And so I'm really glad that you're here. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. I try to meet with every new board member, and so I'll reach out to you soon about that. And, you know, since we do have new board members, I just want to remind everyone about the training requirements that we have. We were reminded of that, you know, at the beginning of the year. And so, you know, continue to check in with the director about that. If you're unfamiliar, you can reach out to me as well. There's a lot of resources on that front end. Those are more like administrative things. Substantively, I've had a few meetings with the mayor's office and the city manager's office. The meeting with the mayor's office was about now I'm forgetting which one. We talked about a lot of things, but there's the surveillance item that will be going to the Rules and Agenda Committee. And we talked about hopefully getting a recommendation from that Rules and Agenda Committee to the Public Safety Committee, which would give us an additional meeting in order to discuss the implications of that surveillance item, so that we don't have to decide anything with finality at this meeting, but then we can actually make a informed recommendation at the next meeting. And she seemed optimistic that that would be the case. Also meeting with the city manager and board member Lestwich with the city manager about our regulations and on Thursday. So I'll provide an update, or board member Lestwich will provide an update on that after that meeting. But you know, there's a lot of behind the scenes work that we're doing here. Yeah, and last thing is I connected with the chief and deputy chief about the sanctuary city policy and its implications and interactions with protests. And I believe that the deputy chief today will be providing some update on that at the report. That's my understanding, at least. Those are the only things that I have. If anyone else has any reports, comments, questions. No. Oh, also welcome back, Board Member Williams.
Thank you.
Very surprised, but pleasantly surprised to see you here.
Yes, thank you.
Anyone else then? Okay. After that, let's go to 7, Chief of Police Report, Deputy Chief Tate. Welcome.
Much. Good evening, everyone. Want to start off with a couple cases of interest. One happened on the 16th of this month when a couple of our officers were driving on University when they drove up on an in progress robbery at 7-Eleven. They saw a suspect engage in a physical altercation with one of the store employees, and when they tried to detain the suspect, he took off on foot. And after a short foot chase, they caught up with him and were able to arrest him for the robbery. And then on the 19th, officers were in the area of San Pablo Park as part of the Juneteenth celebration extra patrol, and they received a flock alert that a vehicle was wanted in connection with a domestic violence and kidnapping. And then in the 2700 block of Door, they saw the vehicle parked on the street. A couple of our officers initiated a high-risk vehicle stop. They were able to detain the 3 occupants. And in addition to arresting the wanted suspect for the flock hit, officers found a loaded handgun inside the vehicle along with a 32-round magazine. The other 2 occupants were also arrested for weapon and drug-related offenses. So this arrest happened only 2 blocks away from the Juneteenth celebration. I highlight these 2 cases because they're examples of our continued commitment to being in the right place at the right time where we can be, and obviously for community safety. In both cases, officers were out on the street and able to take action in that moment. For community events today, I'm happy to say that we participated. I was one of the runners as well in the Northern California Law Enforcement Torch Run. That is a relay event supporting the Special Olympics, and it's an international fundraising and awareness campaign where over 110,000 law enforcement personnel carry what they call the Flame of Hope, which is the torch to support Special Olympics. So today, officers and staff joined the 2025 Northern California Torch Run, running alongside UC Berkeley PD, and we handed off the torch down in Emeryville to Emeryville PD. So our participation supports both fundraising and raising public awareness for Special Olympics, fostering community connection, and championing the spirit of inclusivity and athletic achievement. As far as staffing is concerned, not much update there, with the exception of I did want to touch, as Director Aguilar did on last night's City Council meeting. So as you're aware, several key decisions were made as part of the city's broader effort to address budget shortfalls. Those efforts included position freezes across multiple departments, including the police department. So as part of the adopted balancing strategies within BPD, we have 7 sworn officer, 1 sworn sergeant, 4 public safety dispatchers, a supervising public safety dispatcher, and an office specialist 3 position that have also all been frozen. Other items of interest last week, the department shared with the ODPA the acquisition and use reports for the internal surveillance camera as part of a larger PSB detention area security system renovation project. So we're working with Public Works, and part of that is to replace the jail control panel and also upgrade and expand the surveillance camera system that already exists within the facility. Portions of the project are contingent on PAB review and ultimately City Council approval for both the acquisition report and surveillance use policy as required by the STO. So we can answer any more detailed questions about those via email throughout the week. I'd like to say that we're wrapping up the military equipment report, and we should have that ready to share by the end of the week as well. And then a very heavy lift, the MOU compendium. I got it uploaded today, so I anticipate sharing the final draft and all the documentation tomorrow with the PAB. We've also received some community questions about what to expect, as the chair shared, with regards to federal immigration enforcement in Berkeley. And I wanted to address a few of these concerns. We have put out some information publicly. In short, we remain committed to the sanctuary city values in Berkeley, those of protecting rights to dignity and the safety of all residents, regardless of immigration status. Our sanctuary city ordinance, state law, and department policy prohibit local police from participating in immigration enforcement. This includes not honoring civil immigration detainers, not conducting joint operations with federal immigration authorities, and not inquiring about an individual's immigration status during routine police contact. We will not assist federal agencies unless required by a judicial warrant, or if there's a clear non-immigration related public safety threat. Even then, involvement is extremely limited. If individuals claiming to be federal agents are operating in Berkeley and are masked or are unidentified, as we've seen in the news, our officers are authorized to request ID and confirm their legal authority, and we do this to protect our community and prevent impersonation or unlawful detentions. We do not target or arrest individuals involved in peaceful protests or solidarity actions. Our officers are trained to uphold First Amendment rights and respond only to unlawful conduct when necessary. And Berkeley PD continues to monitor the proposed legislation coming down, such as efforts to ban federal officers from concealing their identity, and we will adapt our practices accordingly. Ultimately, we appreciate everyone's concern and asking us questions. We remain focused on the lawful, compassionate policing that our community expects. And that is all I have tonight.
Thanks, Deputy Chief. Would you take questions if there are any?
Sure.
Anyone?
Deputy Chief Tate, thank you for the report. Really appreciate it. I just have a question. Unfortunately, I'm just now finding out about what happened last night at the city council meeting. But from what I gathered, you said that there's multiple hiring freezes across the department that are taking place. But I also heard that there's been a budget increase for the department. So, how do those two coincide with each other? How is the budget increase? Can you explain what some of the allocations that's supposed to be applied with?
So in short, we have had open positions, and in order to maintain minimum staffing levels for our operations, so those are our patrol officers on the street, we have to backfill those positions in order to maintain certain staffing levels. So with that being said, traditionally, we come in over budget and end up using salary or vacancy savings to a degree in order to compensate for that. So my understanding is that there was an adjustment in the budget to account for sort of where we have never really been fully budgeted for our overtime expenditures in the past.
Okay, thank you.
So following up on that, would the hiring freeze then force the department to spend more on overtime? Or does it project less expenditures on overtime over the next fiscal year than it has in the past fiscal year?
So I think that the challenge is because we have never really been situated with a budget that accounts for the overtime, we will still have to use the overtime in order to maintain certain services and being responsive to calls for service and whatnot. So that being said, I would imagine that we would still use overtime. We're just going to be in a position to not end up over budget, exceeding the overtime that we're allotted, if that makes sense. Hopefully we don't go over it. But I think it's more or less just understanding the impacts of the need to backfill and what the end state is as far as the cost.
Go ahead.
DT Tate, and sorry for, I haven't had an opportunity to talk to you about this particular point or the chief, but do you foresee any immediate impact? As part of our messaging is going to be an adjustment for this reality is to promote that folks use their post system to file complaints, which would then go back to IA. Do you foresee services or within internal affairs being impacted by this, or is that going to be, the integrity of that department going to be maintained through this?
That should be maintained.
Thank you.
Any questions? Say, thanks Deputy Chief Tate for pushing along that MOU compendium. I know it is a heavy lift and, you know, we're looking forward to reviewing it. And I know there's been a lot of work that's been put into that, so thank you for that. Okay, great. Thanks for coming. Number 8, subcommittee reports.
Thank you, Chair Cayetano. For members of the public, will now be reviewing subcommittee reports. Those can be found on page 14 of our packet. We'll be going down the list. Each subcommittee will be providing a report. I'll be starting off with the regulation subcommittee.
We continue to meet, the internal stakeholders, which consists of 10 different individuals from different departments around the city, including the police department. We continue to have internal stakeholder meetings as well as negotiating with the labor union representative. And this is a very labor intensive process. Last Thursday, we had a 3-hour meeting. We will have a 3-hour meeting this Friday. We have 3-hour meetings planned for July 9th, 11th, 15th, 23rd, 31st, August 26th, and 28th. So as you can see, this is a pretty heavy lift and it is taking a very long time. We hope to conclude, I don't know, the end of September. And how? Yeah. Well, and I should say that I was on the regulations subcommittee at the beginning of the PAB, and that was 4 years ago. So we've been at this for 4 years, and the PAB passed our draft regulations 2 years ago. So ever since then, we've been in negotiation of one kind or another.
Going on to the policy review subcommittee,
No update.
metrics and operations.
We should be receiving the next version of the annual report soon.
Outreach and engagement.
No update from us.
Okay, BPD policy 10.7.10.34.
No update.
And welcome back. Arrest photo prohibition policy.
Board member Evans and I will have our first meeting between the two of us on Friday. And then just for the, oh, you're not finished yet. Right, you have a couple more left.
Yeah, we have a liaison list. If there's any updates there.
I'm meeting with Arlo, I believe next week, or sometime in that time frame, about EIS to get an update, which is what we had planned back in February, January, or something like that. As for the, newer board members, we have now critical mass at 8 members, where we could have 3 members per subcommittee. So if you're interested in one of them, please let me know, and we can figure out that at the next meeting. My goal is to give you lanes to explore the areas that you want to explore. And also to fully utilize your strengths, and so that's what we plan to do, and we have been constrained in the past, so I'm really grateful for all of you being here. Okay. I believe that's it for thoughts. Next. Item 9, discussion action, 9A, discussion action on new policy complaint 2025 PR 003.
Perfect, just one moment. Okay. For the members of the public, and as a reminder for the board, item 9A, material for that item is on page 17 of your packets. We did provide a short summary presentation for this. Okay, which is already shared. So if we could proceed to the next slide, please. Just a brief overview, and as a reminder, this would be used for the following items in terms of the general process under section G of our standing rules. We'll first be providing the preliminary overview, followed by 5 minutes for the complainant to provide comments. We'll have an open public comment section on this particular item. As always, BPD will have an opportunity to provide any additional insight that they may have before we bring it back to board deliberation. Next slide, please. For this particular review, our preliminary or our summary of this is going to include a brief overview of the incident summary, the potential policies and practices for this review, as well as our recommendation. Next slide, please. As a brief recap, this complaint, the incident that inspired this policy complaint happened back in September 27th, 2024. The complainant was crossing the street when a vehicle hit her, where she sustained multiple injuries, including broken bones. The collision was classified as a minor injury by the BPD. And on the slide, I know it's hard to see on your screen, but the incident in the Transparency Hub was noted as also being a minor injury, with the cause of the incident being a failure to yield. The complainant alleges that the driver had an expired license, was not tested or detained by the BPD, and was allowed to leave the scene, and further claims that the police department omitted witness, or rather the reporting officer omitted witness statements and key incident details in their report. The complainant recommends or requests that the board look into potentially evaluating BPD's current approach to on-scene investigations involving drivers and pedestrians and incidents that involve pedestrians. The next slide, please. The two policies that we have preliminary identified as a potential source of review, should the board accept this complaint, is EPD policy 501, which involves motor vehicle collision investigations. It outlines the procedures for just investigating injury and non-injury traffic collisions and managing related reports. And EPD policy 323, which provides guidance on report preparations for the officers. For this particular recommendation, for this particular recommendation, what we propose is that we temporarily defer acceptance to give staff a little bit more time to gather additional details as to the specific of the incidents. Before we proceed, I'll hand it back to the director for any additional comments.
Just two quick notes, in every personnel complaint, files a complaint, we receive sometimes it's very specifically tied to an incident. And we always make that call with in conversation with the community member to ascertain whether they want to go this track or personnel track. So that is a conversation we have. We do allow them to make that decision and respect it and bring it to you in the format they wish. And then also we made this recommendation prior to last night, so that will also now impact our analysis into what, if anything, we should do with this complaint.
Lieutenant Rigo, are you familiar with this incident that happened?
I am not, no.
Okay, because I was gonna ask,
Let's hear, we'll have an opportunity to ask some questions, but we do the public comment first.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll start with the complainant, who I believe should be in our attendees section. Could you use the raised hand icon? Or if you're calling in, *9 to be granted permission to speak. Or if you could change your name, that'd be helpful as well. Again, thanks here, if you could use the raise hand icon, please. Or *9 if you're calling in. I see them, but I'm not sure because I can't see their full name. Yeah, if you'd like to provide public comment, you could use the raise hand icon just so that I can identify you. We do have a few folks that are unnamed, so.
Did you say you thought you saw them? Is that?
I believe so, I'm just not sure if it's the person,
What makes you think that?
it's not the full name.
You wanna meet them and just give it a shot?
Yeah, the concern is that we usually allow them to choose to identify themselves. I don't want us.
Okay, that's fair, yeah,
But okay, I see the hand raised. There we go.
okay.
Thank you very much. Okay, the complainant has been granted permission to speak. You may identify yourself if you choose to do so. Per our standing rules, you do have 5 minutes. Here you go.
Hi,
Okay, the time.
I guess I'm unmuted. I'm Michael M. Lever. I'm the person that reported the police actions on the day that I was hit by a car. And I'm happy to answer any questions that people have for me. I did write a letter to the police chief and I have not heard anything back. That was quite a while ago. And I got hold of my council person, but it took them 20 days to get back to me. I just wanted to talk to them about safety on the streets. So I'm here to observe and see if people have any questions for me.
That said, do any other board members have any questions for the complainant?
I think usually we don't take questions,
Okay.
but we allow people to speak. So if you have additional information that you'd like to share with us, then please do, but I don't think we're gonna ask questions right now.
Okay, great. No, I think that the report that I submitted to Mr. Murillo is accurate and states what happened. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, we will now proceed to public comment. If any other members of the public would like to provide public comment on this particular policy complaint, now is the opportunity to do so. If you're physically present, or if you're attending virtually, please use the raise hand icon. Chair, at this time, I see no hands raised for public comment on this item.
Okay, let's go to the next part of our standing rules, which would be comment from BPD representative. There we go. And comments. Would you be willing to entertain some questions if we have?
Well, I'm happy to answer policy questions if I can.
Yeah.
We feel comfortable talking about the merits of.
Yeah, of course, policy related questions. For the time we go.
Yeah, just policy related, typically, someone, is involved, in a collision that results in a pedestrian industry, injury. What's a typical investigation that takes place at the scene? If you could just expound on that.
Yeah, the officer would generally investigate the collision by interviewing all the parties involved, interviewing any witnesses that were involved, and documenting the vehicle information, or if it was a bicycle, the bicycle information, or the pedestrian information. And then documenting the statements from those people in the actual pollution report itself. Now, we do have state regulated forms that the state of California Highway Patrol provides us, and we use that for traffic installations, and they follow set standard or sections that the officer fills in when they're writing the report.
Also, we're gonna have a follow-up question. When does the police officer actually fill out that report and file it?
After they leave the scene, they go right to report.
What typically happens when you find that there's a driver who's been in an accident, especially hit someone, and you find them driving without a license? Is this, I think I understand that it's just get discretionary what to do, but what does the policy say about that?
Well, if they're driving without a license, they could be cited for an infraction, and the type of violation that their license was suspended for. I don't know the situation in the particular case, but they can be cited, and the vehicle could be towed if the license was suspended.
And so it sounds like there's some discretion. Given that you've phrased it as they can do such and such, but does policy say that they should or shall, or do you remember what?
Yeah, no, there can be discretion involved. They're not a reasonable person who has their vehicle towed. If it's at the side of the road, they can leave it parked legally. So it depends on the situation.
Okay. Any other questions?
I have a question at the end. It says at the time of this writing, ODPA staff is not able to confirm the omittance of this information in the BPD incident report. So does that mean it could have been in the incident report, but you can't confirm whether it's there?
Yeah, typically at the policy review level, we don't do any preliminary fact checking. We are trying to assess whether it's a policy related matter, and we let the board make a decision before there. So we haven't collected any information on this.
Is that something that could be confirmed?
Yeah, we could make the request, typically, yeah, we just need to formally let them know under what authority we're making these requests.
Got it.
So usually when we make requests pursuant to a policy, there's like an extra step that we have to take to request specific documents particular to an incident, and you know, they wouldn't do that before we ask them to.
Right.
And Chair, if I may, I just want to confirm that after we have drafted this report, we did receive the copy that the complainant had. We just haven't had an opportunity to thoroughly review it pending the board's decision.
The complainant had a copy of the report.
Yes, yes, we just don't have any of the additional documents that might have been related, just that one copy.
All right, we'll formally open this up to the board discussion. Thank you, Lieutenant Regatta, for weighing in.
I'd sort of like to know from staff, if we were to go with the recommendation and ask you to investigate the matter further, how time consuming would that be? I mean, I'm worried about the budget reality right now and our abilities. I know we have a lot of open policy reviews. So how time consuming does this seem?
Yeah, I don't know that this is time consuming per se, but I also don't know the appetite for the board in terms of time frames. I know that there's interest to move things along. So like at the next meeting, we'll bring back the recommendations on where we're gonna adjust our workload. We'll be better equipped to tell you more or less, but on its face, this doesn't sound like a hidden thing, but we would also prioritize our existing work, especially our personnel investigations.
Well, let me ask a different question. Would this be the task that one of your new interns would be able to do, or is it too in the weeds?
I think it depends. We would need to map out, there are certain things that are public facing that shouldn't be an issue, but we would need to really map out what we're gonna assess in this. Some of these things I think might have already been explained with the information we received tonight from the lieutenant, so we just need to cross-reference some of these things with the case file, so.
So potentially, but not fully.
Right. Might be limitations.
Yeah, so I don't want to volunteer y'all for work. Okay, so any other comments on? Yeah.
Well, it just seems to me that we don't have any information about whether a policy needs to be amended. Because on its face, it sounds like it's more of an individual, complaint against an individual officer. Which I can't tell by reading this, what policies, what the proposal would be to change the policy.
Yeah, and I think this is where we could potentially get into the weeds of it is the policy needs to practice, like the policy may be clear as day. But if we do an audit, a light audit of like 5 other cases, are we seeing a pattern here that they're not interviewing people as the policy requires? So where's the gap there between what the policy says and why officers can't? And I think that's what we would try to recommend. Maybe we need to adjust the policy in a way that it reflects the reality of what's happening on the scene.
I hear what you're saying, it's just if there's if the policy is appropriate and the practice is not, sounds to me like the practice is a violation of the policy, individual violation of policy. So I guess I'm not sure how we as a board address practices.
We usually would make the policy clearer in a way that.
Assuming the policy isn't clear.
Exactly. Yeah.
But sounds like you're saying policy could be clear, but the practice deviates from that.
Yeah, and then I'm theoretically, and just, surface level, that's something we can explore.
And I would think if this would potentially involve an audit of other traffic incidents, that sounds time consuming, and I wouldn't think, I know we aren't there yet, but I don't think that would be the best use of staff's time. If it wasn't clear that there was a policy that would change.
Could I ask you how you phrase the question to the complainant, whether they want us to do a policy and practices review or a personnel complaint? How do you put it? Because I can imagine that somebody might say, oh, I don't want an officer to be disciplined necessarily, I just want this to be looked into. And so I'm just wondering how, because this feels more like it's about the individuals who were there.
Yeah.
And it may be that you could explain the difference in a way that, I can imagine a lot of people don't want the officer to be disciplined if it's about discipline versus not discipline. On one hand, misconduct might end in discipline, the policy review doesn't, so then they'll choose policy review just because they don't want the officer disciplined. But, we've seen a number of these where it looks like a personnel complaint as opposed to a policy.
And I think what you said at the baseline, that's what we do, we explain like what the outcome is.
Right.
The personnel track is gonna take us, when we make an assessment, whether they deviated from that policy and they need to be disciplined. Like that's generally what we say, whereas policy and practice procedures, we're looking more broadly and we're trying to make recommendations where necessary. I think though, you raise an important thing, one area that might be important to explore the appropriateness of even mediation for something like this. Because sometimes even just if they don't want an officer to get in trouble with the conversation help. But right now, our mediation is only through the personnel track, so.
I'm thinking maybe the discussion could be more about the type of review we do as opposed to focusing on discipline as an outcome.
And do you want to speak to our answer a little bit more about the conversation that's mostly happening?
Yeah. So as the director mentioned, the goal whenever we receive these policy reviews, for me, it's one to determine what the fact pattern was, and speaking with the complainant. The second is to explain the difference between a policy complaint and a personnel complaint, and explain the different outcomes of the two. For example, if there's concern about the practice, or was there concern about the specific incident itself. One of the comments that was made to me in this particular instance that led to ultimately the decision of bringing this as a policy review, or rather helping determine whether the complainant wanted a policy review or not, was that the complainant had received comments from the medical staff that it's something that they see routinely about certain information being omitted, or that certain injuries were downplayed. This wasn't specific to the BP in general, but rather a general practice at one of the local hospitals, or an observation that had been passed on to the complainant. So from that context is where we were told that the reason for a policy complaint was that specific detail.
Wait, so she, in her capacity, I think I read a retired nurse or something like that, or am I making that up?
No, it did say retired nurse, but this was while she was receiving treatment at the hospital.
That she was told while she was receiving treatment that oftentimes injuries aren't reported.
Or rather, that the full report doesn't accurately reflect the reality of an injury.
The full police report.
Correct.
Okay, well, I'm gonna figure out what kind of recommendation to make. I think this is one of those things where it's like, it is kind of like you flagged for us, right, Director, that this is impacted by your staffing levels, and I know there are a lot of big rocks that you're dealing with, trying to push up a hill. My preference would be like, if someone in your office was interested and there was some sort of limited capacity that they could actually work on this and they were interested in it, that would be like my preference, to not like put this in front of you. And if you don't think it's possible though, like I would feel comfortable leaving it to your discretion in that sense. But that's sort of like where I'm at with my trying to build some consensus out of nothing. Anyone else have thoughts on that recommendation?
I agree with the recommendation, the temporary deferral.
Sorry, which one, who are you agreeing with?
That we should temporarily defer acceptance of the policy complaint,
Okay.
so that the LBPA staff has more time to investigate the matter.
Right. But that seems like that's actually saying that we want them to spend time investigating it, right? That's what you're saying.
That's what the recommendation seems to be.
Right, did this recommendation come before the vote last night, though?
Yes,
So,
but we are committed to next meeting, have for you a full review and a workload assessment where we can adjust it, so we can include that into our analysis and we can bring that back to you. Without doing any further fact finding, at this point, but we can more holistically review it and let you know, okay, if we were to accept it, this is what we do, this is a tentative timeframe.
You'll be spending time on that.
Yeah, but that's, we're already doing that, that's part of the overall assessment.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we can go along with it and investigate, it's like a limited scope investigation, we're not interested in the full scope of, audit or. I feel like what I had said can be reconciled with what board member what names it said, but, any other thoughts?
I guess it's not, it seems like this could just be an individual, a matter of, whatever, a staffing matter. In which case, I'm just not sure I would recommend spending any time on it.
I would agree.
Yeah.
I don't understand what you mean.
I mean, like, it seems possible that this officer didn't, it feels like the procedure is pretty clear what they should have done. And based on this complaint, it seems like this individual officer didn't do what they were supposed to do. In which case, I don't know if it warrants refining a policy. It involves disciplining the officer. And so I would think, I'm not sure if there's an action for us to do, or I wouldn't recommend it, actually.
My interpretation of the memo was that this is an individual who's not satisfied with the way the report was written. And because she's not satisfied with how the report is written, doesn't mean that the officer didn't follow policy. And I think if she's alleging in the memo that her injuries weren't accurately documented in a report, how would the police officer know?
I heard you agreeing with what, Buffalo Charco.
Good one.
Yeah, listen, okay, so you're aligned with that, okay.
Yeah.
Kind of poll, trying to move this toward some sort of recommendation.
We can,
But I think the director, I mean, what the director is saying is that he can come back next time, he's planned anyway to come back next time with an overall sort of picture of what we can achieve, not on this issue, but in general. And therefore, where this would sit within that picture, and at that time, we can decide to reject it, accept it, defer it, or whatever. So you sort of don't have to make a decision until you give us this overall frame. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's what we.
Because we don't, unlike policy complaints, we don't have any deadlines on, unlike personnel complaints, we don't have any deadline on policy. So we could see how it fits into the overall work plan before deciding. Okay, so I think it does raise the question, and I think this is really important. It raises this issue, this particular incident raises the question of the presentation to the complainant, like how the personnel complaint and the policy complaint differ. Because I wouldn't want them to just sort of move to the policy complaint on the grounds that they don't want the officer to be disciplined. Because in fact, we can do a policy complaint and end up not recommending discipline at all, even if it's sustained. So, because we've seen enough of these that it seems to me maybe there's something there.
Let's hear from Board Member Evans and then left question.
Yeah, I was just, I plus one the comment from board member Calavita. I would like just a little more information, and if we're doing sort of an assessment of sort of where we should proceed with our sort of full caseload, I would like this to be included.
No, I agree with you on that. I think we'll have a better sense once we've got a global view of the other policy complaint.
I heard your vote, that's why I was.
I mean, well, I'm gonna ask my question. The question I have is for the director. How many complaints did we receive related to police reports?
I can't give you that number, but it's, we do receive,
How many have you received in 2025?
I can't tell you. We'll know, when we submit the report, we'll look at that specifically. And I don't know if our data analyst with the, this time or not, I have that, okay.
Okay, I'm gonna ask for a motion then, some motion, so we can vote on it.
I move that we defer voting on this particular matter until staff comes back with a list of all the policy complaints, so that we have a better sense of where this would fit within that frame.
I second.
Sorry, could we repeat?
I second the motion.
Do a roll call vote.
Okay, we're gonna, let's keep the motion,
Okay.
and then.
So on the motion to defer the decision until staff comes back with the list of policy complaints, pending policy complaints, does that accurately capture the motion?
That's what I said. Is your list gonna be broader than policy?
Well, no, sorry, it's gonna include our workflow. Is that correct, Director?
What was is the list gonna include?
Well, this was included for the policy complaints as well as an overall pattern of what your workload looks like.
Yes.
That's fine. Okay.
So that said, Chair or Board Member Calvita,
Yes.
Board Member Lefkovich,
Yes.
Board Member Williams,
Yes.
Board Member Wells,
No.
Board Member Evans,
Yes.
Board Member Boswell,
No.
and Chair Cayetano.
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries with 5 votes in favor, 2 noes, and 1 absence.
Okay, great. Thanks, everyone. Let's go to 9.2. Gotta find my back here.
9B.
9B, sorry, discussion action on new policy complaint 2025 PR 0004.
Get it loaded up. Okay. There we go. Okay, so this is a policy complaint for 2025 PR 004, which is more specifically on the right to report to police in the public. And this is just an overview of what we will be, the process we'll be following. Was used on the last slide as well. Next slide, please. For this overview, we'll be providing an incident summary of the potential policies and practices for procedures for review, as well as recommendations. We do want to acknowledge that there was a video that was included with this. It was part of the June 4th during that course of incidents with the 8th and Harrison. And we have those videos ready to present down the line. So for the incident summary, just one brief correction on the memo we provided. We did say June 6th, but the incident date was June 4th. We just want to clarify on the record. Took place on 8th of Harrison Street. The complainant alleges that 3 officers physically blocked them from observing and reporting police activity. The complainant raises concerns with APD policy 426, which was formerly General Order D2, stating that it lacks severe protection for First Amendment rights. The complainant cites 2 court cases, like we apologies for butchering that, as well as ACLU v. Alvarez, which both cases affirm the right to report police in public spaces. The request is for a policy revision to minimize restrictions on public observation and limit use of police lines to only when necessary. And as previously noted, the policy that we would be focusing on, or at least from our preliminary assessment, should the board accept it, would be BP policy 426, public reporting of police activity. This policy provides guidance for public photography and reporting of police activities, and it affirms the public's rights to report from lawful locations while allowing limitations if recording interferes with police duties and their safety. In this particular incident, our recommendation is that the board should accept the policy review. But based on section 2G1B of the board's interim regulations, we would just advise that it not be brought back, that a policy recommendation be discussed until the conclusion of a personnel complaint. And I'll give it back to the director to provide additional context on that as well.
And that has been a consistent, I think, guidance that we have provided to the body, just because the standard rules and the insurance regulations, well, this whole process requires that objectivity. So when there's overlapping policy personnel, you don't wanna put yourself in an arena where you start, dissecting or making comments about the policy in a way that it could, be perceived as if that was biasing your lens of the personnel related matter. So we just wanna walk that line very, carefully.
And how do you make that determination, Director, that there is overlap? Does it have to arise from the same incident, or does it have to relate to the same policy?
It could be both, certainly, definitely when it's the same incident, I think, it's more obvious, but if there's a general policy, the overlap, then we would also make that recommendation.
I believe we have public comment on this. Did you have, was that the end of your
Yeah.
presentation? Okay, let's go to public comment first, and then we'll decide what to do.
Okay. We do have the complainant on the line.
Oh, sorry, complainant first, and then public comment, sorry.
Okay, so the complainant has been granted permission to speak. 5 minutes are on the clock.
All right, thank you very much, Commissioners. Good evening. My name is Andrea Pritchett, and I did submit a misconduct complaint and a policy complaint. And although we can say that they are related to are exemplified by the police action on June 4th, the reason why I feel like there's some discretion for you to begin a policy complaint, even though there is a personnel complaint, is because we're not just dealing with policy here, we're dealing with the First Amendment. And that whatever policy is put in place by the PRC is superseded by our First Amendment protections that grant us the right to petition the government for a redress of our grievances. That means that I have the right to gather evidence. And so there's no policy that BPD is going to put in place that's going to supersede that. But what the PAB does have the opportunity to do is to create a policy that will better protect the city from litigation. So when I read your policy, what I don't find is a description of First Amendment protections in it. And if I were an officer looking at that policy for guidance, I don't think I would be impressed with the severity of what it means to abridge the public's right to observe. I'm not just talking about whether or not a police officer is physically preventing, by using physical force. I'm talking about where the command staff decides to put up a yellow caution tape. Is it blocks away from the area of incident? Is it so far away as to actually prevent the practical observation of police activity? And that has increasingly become the norm in Berkeley Police Department operations, that when it's simply inconvenient for an officer, they're putting up yellow tape, regardless of whether or not they're trying to protect, a crime scene, to protect the scene from being contaminated, or they're using tape simply to prevent people from observing. So I feel like this policy is becoming more urgent, because if you're paying attention to ICE raids and the desire of the public to document the activity of ICE agents and our police officers who may or may not be present on the scene, it's getting very, there's a huge public interest in this issue. And I know that your policy reviews take a long time. They go on for years. And maybe I would love for you to prove me wrong. But I would like you to begin this process as soon as possible, because if you wait until the resolution of the misconduct complaint, we're talking many months from now that you would even begin this review. So I would really encourage you to take this up as soon as you can. We used to have a policy. There was a training bulletin that guided the department and officers into how they should regard citizen observation of the police. It was called Training Bulletin 91. And the most often cited sentence from that was that it was the intention of Berkeley Police Department to put the least possible restriction on citizen observation of the police. And it turns out that that was the jewel that has been discarded in the new policies. And I think officers, I fear that the current policy actually miseducates officers into thinking that they have more discretion than they do. So I really encourage you to take this up. I hope you will consider it. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, just for the board's clarification, our recommendation was that for any final policy recommendation, so we do believe there might be a space to do some work, but when you get it down to the very recommendation that you're gonna submit publicly, that's what we're asking to have some sort of consideration where the overlap could impact.
Okay, let's circle back to that after the public comment, because I'm sure that raised some questions for people.
Okay, we'll now start with those physically present.
Hi, Gordon Gilmore with the Berkeley Homeless Union. I was there the morning of the sweep in question. And I was attempting to record as best I could so that we could use that information to hold the police and city workers accountable later. And as is my First Amendment protected right. But something had happened that hadn't happened in any of the previous sweeps that took place in Berkeley. They set the police tape around the perimeter of the entire encampment. They wouldn't let anyone go past that line to any line. They hadn't even finished putting the police tape around the end. I stepped a little toe over the edge of where the police tape would have ostensibly been. And like 2 cops were on me right away, telling me back up, get out of there type of situation, but it was my right to record what was going on. And it's activists and advocates recording what happens in encampment sweeps that actually continues to ensure the humane and compassionate treatment of unhoused people to the degree to which the city grants it. That's part of why Where Do We Go, and the homeless union helped Where Do We Go set up the protests and encampments in the first place to bring into the public eye what was going on to unhoused folks in Martian society, to which they were generally relegated, cast into the shadows so that how they're treated can't be seen. And I can't think of a policy issue that's more germane to the purposes of this than ensuring that activists and advocates continue to hold the police accountable when it comes to how they don't have they're treated. So I hope that you move on this soon and that we can retain the right to record when it comes to sweeps. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now move on to our virtual attendees if there's no additional public comment. Okay. Ilana Arfon has been granted permission to speak.
Hi there. So I arrived at the raid at about 2 o'clock on the day of the raid, and there was still the police tape was up, and there was a police vehicle, a big pickup truck that was blocking 8th. Harrison Street, actually, as I approached 8th Street. And it was like a half a block in the middle of, in the middle of the street. And so I spoke to the officer and he said that, nope, I couldn't go. I couldn't pass. I went then on to 8th Street and was there when the judge made the ruling to cease and desist. So this was illegal, according to the judge. It was a backup in the court that as soon as possible, the judge ruled to cease and desist, that the city was not supposed to do this. So this is a big issue. It's not only, and so I want to encourage you to investigate, to not wait, to investigate. This is very important to the community. This is a high priority situation because it demonstrates what our police are doing to our most marginalized community. And so this is an insight into what they're capable of. So we need to nip this in the bud as soon as possible. And so I really want to encourage you. I know that there may be, an officer investigation or whatever, a personnel investigation, but simultaneously be investigating this. When the police tape came down immediately, when the judge ordered the cease and desist, I walked it wasn't even because the police left. As soon as the cease and desist, they were out of there. But who was still there was the Public Works Department. And there was about 12 or so around a Public Works truck. And I walked with my dog, who's really a cute dog. A lot of people just love my dog. These people, it was as if I had the plague or something. These are our Public Works people. These were not the police officers. And there was this us and them kind of feel, and very defensive. And I spoke to the team lead, and in speaking with him, I asked, what kind of support are you giving to your employees? Because they just at least witnessed a very traumatizing situation. And the way he spoke was really dehumanizing of our unhoused population. So I thank you.
Okay, and we have one more speaker, Jennifer Tu, you've been granted permission to speak. There's 3 minutes and one.
Thank you, Jennifer Tu with the American Friends Service Committee, and speaking to echo what the previous speakers have shared. For any police officer, Berkeley or otherwise, I expect them to not violate my constitutional rights. But one thing I don't expect is I don't expect them to be constitutional law experts. Right. And so that means I don't expect them to understand the case law that might be established around constitutional rights. I don't expect them to understand the implications of how what they choose or not to do might interface with constitutional law. I do expect them to very closely understand their department's policy and make every effort to adhere to it. And so I can definitely see situations in which or rather in this particular situation, it sounds like the officers involved may have adhered to the policy, but done so in a way that may open up the city to successful litigation on the basis of violating constitutional rights. I heard earlier about the budget crisis, and obviously increasing liability for something that could be solved through policy in any time, but especially during a budget crisis, does not seem like a great thing to do. So I just want to encourage this body to listen to what has been offered and explore how the policy can better explain how officers can not violate constitutional rights and build that into the policy. Just to close, I will note that what occurred was a very grave situation. And it's not necessarily the only one, right? We see what is happening in Los Angeles, in San Diego. This situation on its own is important, and also it may not be the only one. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair, at this time, there are no additional hands raised.
Standing rules, Enrico, do you have any comments on this policy?
No, other comments or questions?
Okay, so I think next we have the video, but there is a prior question about this, you know, deferral of it pending the complaint, so I wanna flesh that out before we decide whether or not to view the video or not. So could you maybe go back to what you were saying about?
Sure, and if I can have our resident clerk, so the language that we draw from, we make that recommendations in the interim regs. In section, what is it, 2G, 2G1B. It indicates no member of a hearing panel shall publicly state an opinion regarding policies directly related to the subject matter of a pending complaint, publicly comment on any of the facts or analysis of a pending complaint, or pledge or promise to vote in any particular manner in a pending complaint. So I think that there's ways to navigate this, but I think it needs to be done very carefully. There's ways to potentially do what a policy review plan may look like. But I think when you potentially state opinions on the policies, that's where the concern is for us.
So I'm gonna caution board members to not speak on this particular policy until we decide what to do with it. And we figure out the procedural because of our standing rules right now. I think one thing that we have talked about in the past is that our standing rules specify that it's a member of a hearing panel. And so there is always an option that, because we are now a big board, that a smaller group of 2 board members could recuse themselves from that hearing panel, could recuse themselves from the complainant voting panel as well, and agree to take on a subcommittee oversight of a policy review. So that, because we are now 8, that's always, that is an option here as well. But we have to, you know, toe a fine line, because we would have to decide who's doing that, and then we would, the rest of the members probably shouldn't be commenting on the actual incident or policy while there's a pending complaint. Does anyone have any questions or comments about that?
Wait, so sorry, I'm the newbie. So there is a complaint. Someone filed a complaint about this particular incident.
So we don't confirm or deny it, but there is subject matter that may overlap.
Got it.
So it seems to me that we could do a policy review of 426. Independent of any incidents in the recent or distant past, and do on its face a policy review of 426. And it's a short policy, and frankly, I think would not be very time consuming. And I would be willing to participate in that if there's a subcommittee or a subcommittee one, but I don't. Having said that, I also think it might not be a good idea to watch videos tonight of the incident that was talked about at the last meeting. Because of his concern.
Specifically related to the the preventing someone from viewing not to the other policy that we're gonna discuss.
Yeah.
Right.
Hi, this is Leah. I just wanted to say I'm here. Yeah.
Oh,
Hi, I'm not sure what you're discussing, but I just wanted to announce I'm here. Sorry.
Oh, well,
Wait.
let the record reflect that Vice Chair will be here. So yes, Board Member Lethbridge, I see your face here.
I see my face. I guess I'm hesitant for the reasons that were articulated by the members of the public to defer this policy review. I feel better if we had copies of the policies so that rather than some language, it outlines guidelines.
Yeah.
If the policies were actually attached so that we could just quickly
Yeah.
look at them.
Yeah.
I think that would give us a better sense of how easy it would be to insert a line, or if basically it's covered, but those words aren't used or something.
right.
So I would just ask in the future that we be given the actual policy language. And then as far as the concern about a board member expressing an opinion, so if we went the route that board member Calavita was suggesting, if she took that on, then if there was a hearing at a future date on a individual complaint, then she would recuse herself. Is that kind of what you were thinking, Chair, or how would this play out?
So the way that it would play out is we would vote for someone to take up a member or a subcommittee to take up policy. And we would not then comment on said policy. We would allow them to, within the subcommittee, deal with the policy and come back with a recommendation later on. In the meantime, we would be able to hear the complaint. Because we know at that point, no one would be speaking publicly on a policy that is related to the subject matter of the complaint. If we were to vote for a specific member to take on that in a subcommittee.
Would I would then recuse myself from that hearing?
We would move on and we would not say anything publicly so that you wouldn't have to do that. But if you were to discuss it at a subcommittee, I think that the subcommittees are open to the public, is that right?
If it's ad hoc, they can meet behind closed doors. If it's a recurring meeting with an established mandate or time plan, then that's subject to the Brown Act, but ad hoc meetings are not.
If it was a subcommittee of one, there wouldn't be any.
Well, it would be assigned to an individual.
I'm sorry, and this is a subcommittee to do organized around what?
So, for background, Vice Chair Wilson, we just heard from members of the public about a, policy review, that's in our packet on page 24, that has to do with first right to record. And we've been informed by the director that it's likely that this, overlaps with subject matter that, of a pending complaint. And so we're deciding how to address that in light of our standing rules, which say that no board member shall publicly voice an opinion on a matter related to the subject matter of a pending complaint.
Okay.
So I know we're stuck in this like weird procedural hole. But I did hear, I heard one board member willing to take this on, which I would be in favor of, and does anyone else wanna join in on that venture?
Would I make a motion?
Let's wait to, does anyone else wanna join?
Oh,
In
the subcommittee?
Sure,
Oh.
yeah.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble finding the thing in the packet. What policy is this?
It's on page 24 of the packet.
The policy is on page
Policy.
25, right? It would,
Right.
the subcommittee would be looking at.
The policy is policy 426, which is on page 25 of the packet.
Yeah, but the policy is not there.
Right. Vice Chair Wilson, do you have an interest? I don't know if you're just trying to get on the same page or if you're interested.
No, I'm only trying to get on the same page. I'm just.
Okay, well. Sounds good. In that case, if no one else is interested, or not interested, but if we're willing to allow board member Calavita to take this on, then, I feel like that's within the bounds of our practices. So I guess I would ask for a motion.
I don't think would take much work, but I do need to coordinate a bit with the department. Yeah. So I would move that we accept the policy review
And assign it to you.
and assign it to me.
Second. Great.
Okay, so on the motion to accept the policy review and assign it to board member Calavita. Motion by board member Calavita, and I believe the second was by board member Wells. Okay.
That's it. Sorry. Well, we're gonna vote.
Yes.
But I'm gonna say, like, this is also an opportunity, which we've talked about in the past, to include members of the public who are interested in the crafting of policy. And it's something that we've tried to emphasize in the past, is that we can both collaborate with the department on their policy, but also members of the public who are interested in that policy. So I'm saying this might be an opportunity for that.
Okay. Now proceed with roll call vote. Board member Calavita.
Yes.
Board member Lethwich.
Yes.
Board member Williams.
Yes.
Board member Wells.
Yes.
Board member Evans.
Yes.
Board member Bisbal Sharpo.
No.
And Vice Chair Wilson.
Yes.
And Chair Petron.
Yes.
The motion carries 7 yes, 1 no. Okay.
Okay, moving on to 9C, policy complaint 2025 PR 005.
So this next policy review that we received is number 2025-005. The inspiring incident is the 8th and Harrison Street encampment events of June 4th. And again, we note that in our memo, we wrote in June 6th, but the correct date is June 4th. And we could skip this slide. It's the same slide we've been using for the last two in terms of process. For this particular review, we do have the incident summary, and as in the previous ones, the potential policies and practices, the recommendations. And for this instance, we had compiled the videos that were submitted to us by members of the public, which we have available should the board want to view them. For the incident summary, the allegations presented by the complainant was witnessing excessive force, unnecessary use of less lethal weapons, and suppression of the public's right to observe during the operation, which ties into the previous policy review the board just heard. The claim claims that the encampment residents were not properly notified, violating the due process rights. Urges accountability not only for officers, but also for command staff who authorize operational plans leading to potential policy or legal violations. The proposal here is that there's a new misconduct category for command level personnel responsible for such directives, and request that the PAB review operational documents, including the plan, after action report, and the city manager communications to fully contextualize the incident. And just for members of the public, the more detailed report could be found on page 32 of the agenda packets. Next slide, please. So for potential practices and our procedures for review, we note that the policy that is included in the current policy manual, BPD policy 1100, which is PC 37E, enforcement and 9th Circuit decisions, special order 2018-001, is outdated. It limits enforcement of PC 647E without the chief's approval. And it was again, originally issued a special order 2018, number 1, and no update since the original release, or lexical transmission, which would update the reissue date. Generally though, in terms of policy practices and procedures, one aspect that we may not have identified with the information we have now is just reviewing how the operational perimeters are determined, the deployment of less lethal munitions during encampment operations, and the considerations of alternative de-escalation methods. For this recommendation, we presented that the PAB should accept the policy complaint and authorize our office to conduct a preliminary investigation into the incident. Upon completion, we would bring back the report to the PAB for your review, discussion and consideration of potential policy recommendations to the relevant stakeholders. And that's what we have for that specific presentation. Hand it back to the director for additional comments.
So just a reminder, this was for pre-funding, so however, this would be likely one of the, if accepted, sort of complaints that we'll prioritize, so. If we were to be assigned.
Fine, thank
So
you.
with-
Anything else?
with-
Look,
With
we're
respect,
gonna,
oh, sorry, Josh, I'll wait for you to call on me.
well, did you have a question for the director? Because we're gonna go to public comment, then we'll go back, we'll circle back.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, and I'll be granting the complainant permission to speak again. One moment while I put the timer on the screen. And timer is now up.
Thank you. Thank you, commissioners, for hearing this as well. I offer this policy complaint, but I'm afraid that the areas for review maybe aren't quite what I had intended. What concerns me is that it was no accident that almost 40 officers or somewhere in that neighborhood showed up at 5:30 in the morning on June 4th at 8th and Harrison. That's the city manager's office, Public Works, and the police department. There were others. So this was a very, very coordinated effort on the part of our city department heads. When, it was well established that yes, officers agreed that they were, people in the camps were given a 20-minute notice to vacate. And a judge later on the day in that day said, "Oh my goodness, that constitutes a violation of the due process rights of those people in the encampment." Further, there was the establishment of these perimeters. There were supervising lieutenants present on scene who witnessed excessive force, who saw, and may I speculate, oversaw the use of less lethal weapons. And yet, what was the crime that had been committed? What was the crime scene there? My concern is that individual officers acting under the orders of department heads and commanders, are they guilty of misconduct? If they are witnessed, if their conduct is witnessed and approved of and planned for by command staff, how does this body hold the command staff accountable? What is the allegation category that I should use if I want to complain about a lieutenant who directed other officers to violate the constitutional rights of the public? And so I don't believe that has been established yet by this board. And I would encourage you to begin that inquiry. I think we have to begin by doing an investigation of what actually happened. And that's why I ask you to get the operational plan for that action. What were the officers told to do before that action began? What weapons were they told to bring to the site? What coordination with the city manager's office were they told? That it was an incredibly over-policed action. There was no crowd there. There were some disabled people in tents. You know, so somebody had it in their mind to shock and awe this community. And I think I think we have to begin to ask the very awkward and uncomfortable questions as to what was the plan and who is responsible for those violations of the rights. So I would ask you to get the operational plan. I would also ask for the after action report so that we could know was people have said that smoke was used. Was that just a garbage can fire, or were there smoke devices that were used? Less lethal weapons. Why did the police think they needed to have that? You know, how much was used? We know some was used. How much? So I think we need just an overall assess, you know, what actually happened according to the police. You can compare it to other testimonies and other video evidence that you have. But overall, if we see that it wasn't the action of individual officers, but it was baked in, that these violations were baked in and assumed that they could get away with it. So I would ask you to expand the potential areas for review. You know, I wasn't asking you to review Martin v. Boise and, you know, how PC 647E is implemented. I'm asking for something different. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now proceed to public comment. If there are any members of the public that would like to provide public comment at this time, I will start with those physically present first before moving on to our virtual attendees.
Gordon Gilmore, Berkeley Homeless Union. I wanted to say I was there, for the hearing with Judge Chen. And the look that came across his face when he found out that the city attorney was trying to argue that what was posted in January about February 10th sweep prior to the temporary restraining order against the city was sufficient notice. It's, yeah, ludicrous. People were totally not expecting it whatsoever, because we had a hearing coming up on June 10th regarding a preliminary injunction. And it was assumed that the city would not act on the people there until after the hearing had been held. And they should have been able to believe that, because not providing 72-hour notice after a TRO had been submitted or against the city is a due process violation. And again, this is why it's being brought to the public eye will happen to stay unhoused, because people need that advance notice in order to prepare and be ready to, you know, move and do what they have to accommodate what's being done to them. And so it was a gross oversight of people's humanity and the compassion, their dignity and the compassion that's due them. And as such, it's a matter warrants an investigation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public comment from those physically present? Okay, seeing none, I'll now move on to our virtual attendees. Ilana Auerbach, you've been granted permission to speak.
Hi there, thank you. So I just want to encourage you to follow the complainant Andrea Pritchett's requests. There were several attorneys 2 weeks ago when we were there at your meeting who asked the question, who approved this? Who in the city did? And I know you all oversee and ideally hold the police accountable. And I think that this, obviously there's more to it than just the police. And we have to do, I want to encourage you to do as comprehensive an investigation as you are legally permitted to do, because this is an abomination what happened on June 4th. And it was unnecessary. It cost we don't know how many tens of thousands of dollars and harm and violence and brutality. And people are back at 8th and Harrison. So it was a complete and utter failure. We know that this kind of raid is useless and harmful and unkind and exactly the opposite of what is needed. And so I just want to encourage you to do the full breadth of investigation as much about this raid as you can. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we do have one more speaker. Jennifer Tu, you've been granted permission to speak. Timer's on the screen.
Thank you so much. Jennifer Tu with the American Friends Service Committee. I just want to tie in what everyone has said, and especially what the complainant Andrea Pritchett said, with something that was raised in public comment at the beginning of this meeting. At the beginning of this meeting, Barb Atwell spoke about calling on this body to really support maintaining the city law regarding transparency around military equipment. And one of the things she pointed out is the city law is very explicit about the deployment of military equipment, which includes those less lethal weapons, the impact projectiles, the smoke bombs, flashbangs, things like assault rifles, things like that. And what Ms. Atwell pointed out was that the city law requires pointing out the deployments, which would support you in understanding how many less lethal launchers were brought out, how many impact projectiles were brought out, how many were fired, how many smoke bombs were brought out, how much how many assault rifles were brought into the situation, how many flashbangs. Even if that isn't, even if none of them are fired, are detonated, or whatever verb applies to what that object is, what that weapon is, Berkeley's city law would require a level of transparency. And that ties back to what all the other speakers are talking about, of explaining how this was a concerted effort to bring a level of militarization that isn't warranted and was hostile, was not compassionate, was unnecessarily cruel. And so I just wanted to tie those two together, of that city law and how that can expose unnecessary amounts of militarization, and also expose how that might go against state law AB 481 in how policies must show that military equipment is necessary because there's no reasonable alternative, such as maybe providing more time, providing some services, providing some housing that could achieve the same objective of officer and civilian safety. As well, the law also requires policies to safeguard public's welfare, safety, civil rights, and civil liberties. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Chair, at this time, there are no additional hands raised.
Okay, Lieutenant Reagan, did you have any additional comments?
No comments.
Okay, so we do have some video planned, but do we want to take initial comments and then do the video, or Vice Chair Olson, did you also have something you wanted to ask before we do that?
Yeah, I do. Just in terms of the last policy review that we accepted in this one, and again, I totally apologize for being late. I had understood, or I guess thought, that what we would do is accept one policy review that would encompass whatever specific complaints have been filed, as well as the overall question of how the city is handling encampment clearances. Like, that would be one effort that would be undertaken, as opposed to discrete individual policy reviews. So perhaps I missed the overarching framework for what we're doing this evening, but I think it would be more effective to say we are taking on encampment clearances as a topic that will encompass whatever policy complaints have been filed, as well as the broader analysis of what policies, if any, govern this effort and whether or not we should recommend that specific policies be adopted. So I guess that was my idea of how this would proceed rather than assigning like specific subparts out to different committees to work on, because I feel like we'll miss the forest through the trees that way.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that approach. We were kind of constrained in the last one by a different procedural hurdle, where we can't discuss one particular policy, but I feel like we do have an opportunity to discuss your proposal now. But I also want to, recognize we have video planned. So does anyone want to say anything before we watch the video?
Well, I would just echo what the vice chair said, and if there was some way to consolidate these rather than address them piecemeal, I think that'd be more efficient and more useful. But I guess I'm not sure why we're watching a video.
What? Well, that was the request from last meeting, so yeah, we watched the video, but I could just say one quick remark, that some.
Good, and then we'll hear from you. Or go ahead.
In the approach that the vice chair mentioned, is sometimes that is appropriate, because sometimes the policies, he's like, the policy manual is like the Bible, you gotta understand this one to understand this one. And there is language in the conduct policy, if you can pull it up real quick, that talks about orders and following orders. So it's unlawful conflicting orders in 321.3.1, and I'll read it. It's no member is required to obey any order that appears to be in direct conflict with any federal law, state law, or local ordinance. Following the known unlawful order is not a defense and does not relieve the member from criminal, civil prosecution or administrative discipline. If the legality of an order is in doubt, that affected member shall ask the issuing supervisor to clarify the order or shall confer with a higher authority. The responsibility or refusal to obey rests with the member, who shall subsequently be required to justify the refusal. So again, like sometimes they're woven in these concepts in different places.
I just want to
I
make
would
one
just,
other.
sorry, I wanted to go to the question of the video. I had requested that at the last meeting. If it's not appropriate or not warranted now, I don't know that we have to spend time on it. I would just re-emphasize my view that I think it'd be more effective, whether we watch the video or don't, to take on comprehensively the question of encampment clearances. That would encompass whatever complaints have been filed, as well as, again, that broader question of whether or not we actually need new policies to address how that work is undertaken. So I don't know that we need to watch the videos publicly to achieve that outcome, and totally open to skipping that if that's the board's will. But I know that was my request to tee up the video.
Remember that person, that's cool. So sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have a comment.
I just had one comment about this particular proposal about creating a new category of misconduct for command level staff. I think it's an interesting idea. It sounds huge to me. And when I look at what staff had, the chart they had about reviewing case law, I mean, it sounds so huge to me, like it's way beyond. My initial reaction is just that is too big. But again, perhaps when we do this comprehensive view, we'll have other thoughts about that, about the need for new policies. But when I saw that request, it's intriguing, but again, just struck me as possibly beyond what we could legally do, but you know.
Any other comments?
I think in the abstract, I really like the idea of doing the comprehensive review, but I would hope that in the process, if we go that route, first of all, it seems huge. And but if we go that route, do we not lose sight of the particulars of these individual policy complaints? You know, as I understand it, this last one, basically what she's asking is that we get access to documents that show how the operation on, the plans for the operation unfolded, and then post-operation reports, which is, so presumably that would be part of any comprehensive review. But if we're gonna look at the comprehensive review of unhoused encampments, I think we shouldn't lose sight of this particular incident.
I agree.
I don't wanna overspeak, so any other comments on this? The chief did mention that, there is no policy governing encampment sweeps at the last meeting, so it would be a disservice to us, like Vice Chair Wilson is saying, to look at a particular policy as if there was one. So reviewing, how sweeps operate, particularly this one, would give us insight into how to write the policy. And also understand how the practice of encampment sweeps are currently being done in order to understand the bounds of the meets and bounds of what that policy would encompass. I did also ask for the video to be submitted, because I'm not sure like how familiar board members are with what goes on at encampment sweeps, and I wanted for there to be an opportunity for board members to see firsthand what we're even talking about when we talk about this. And so, you know, I'm in favor of like, I think the director like curated a couple videos, is that right? You picked a couple, because we spent the time on it, I would be in favor of it. I think my understanding is Vice Chair Wilson is as well, but if anyone's like, would rather not.
That's fine. Is it long? Are they long?
No, it's a 15-minute information.
I mean, I'm in favor of it. I was gonna say, I actually watched them all this weekend.
Okay.
It's like we were shared on the Dropbox, so I kind of felt like I thought we were supposed to, so.
Yeah.
I watched it.
And you would recommend that we watch it after having watched it?
I think it's worth watching the videos within the context of the memo.
Yeah.
And I think it's helpful for us to have some audio visual context.
Okay.
To what this encampment sweep entailed.
Okay, in that case, like, I would just say, like, let's play a video and let's watch what you put together for us.
In the meantime, Chair, I do want to know if things still online, should you have any additional questions?
There you go.
And so these titles, we added them just for the board's purpose to categorize the different events. Is sound captured or?
There's a line right here. Yeah, is that what's happening?
We're staying behind our car.
You're officer 120?
Yeah, 121. Get behind the car.
120? Get behind the car. What is? Excuse me.
Get behind the car.
I'm trying to cop watch. Whoa.
We've asked you several times. Get behind the car.
Whoa.
We've asked you several times.
What
very
is the
nicely
issue here, officer? Why are you approaching me in this way?
We've asked you to stay behind our car. Please.
But that's a random request.
It's not a random request. We're actually.
No, I have the right to. I have the right to
we're being
observe.
very gracious because you walk behind a note.
Gracious.
Yes.
Gracious.
There's a police no. Don't cross line that you already crossed.
Okay,
right
officer.
There, correct. So behind the car.
Sir, I need you to stop touching me.
Behind the car.
You need to stop touching me.
Just get behind the car.
You guys need to. Whoa. Your hands need to be off of me. Excuse me, officer.
Get behind the vehicle, okay?
What is it? Where in the penal code is your vehicle specified?
No, it's our request. That's what we're telling
Right,
you.
and my request is you to keep your
stop.
hands off of me.
Okay, so like I said, you already passed Please do not cross line.
You randomly put many of them up that have nothing to do with the area of incident.
That's not true. It's not random.
Yeah. Y'all need to keep your hands to yourselves. Now, there's a line there. What does that line signify? Help me understand, officer. There's a do not cross line there. So I'm not crossing that line there.
You're gonna be placed under arrest. Come on.
The car, get
You've
your
already passed
fucking
one
hands
line.
off of me.
Yeah.
Sure you can hear the bullhorn if you want to come over. Let me be clear though, if you cross this line again, you will be arrested.
Wow, wow. What a police state, huh?
Let me be clear.
What a police state.
Don't cross the line.
What a police state, man. Evicting people out of their homes, and you supported them. You're good.
I need to grab my food. I need to grab my food. And I'll get out. You just took over a fucking $5 and bike.
They start those stores up, the secular store for you.
Dude, smash!
No, that's not.
That's my fucking bikes, dude.
Okay, well, you can't, you need to tell them.
Sig Heil.
Tell us.
Following orders.
Listen, nobody served no papers on this board. I've done nothing wrong. You're destroying my property. No, I don't want that. You should have delivered that fucking 2 days ago. I don't want no problem.
I will grab it for you.
It has the bunkers, the brown one. And that minute, hey, and that
More people's personal belongings getting stolen by the City of Berkeley Public Works, supported by the Berkeley Police Department, as they steal people's goods. Are those being stored? Ah, thank you.
Right behind the car.
Yes, I will see if I find the cross tape.
What? Leave me alone, I'm done giving a shit! Out now, you're gonna get shot with less lethal. Now! I ain't doing nothing wrong. Tell him to pack my shit. Back up! Back off!
asked you to stay back. You need to back up.
He asked me to stay behind the police
Yeah,
table,
no, he's
and
actually
I am-
behind the
I
car.
am feet-
No, you need to keep
So
on.
you're
You
not
have to
letting me
back up.
record what's happening?
No,
I'm
I'm
about to
saying
get
you.
shot.
No, we told you what to do,
Okay, I'm
and you're
behind
not
the car,
listening.
sir. I'm behind
So you
the
need to
car
stay
again.
behind the car and
I
be
did
behind.
listen. I have video, and I got instructions to stay behind the police tape, sir. I have video.
You were in front of the car.
Yes.
I'm not gonna ask you again. All right, stay behind the car. Because if you do, you're gonna have to do it in front of all these people live. Now see, I've been hit by a car. Have you been hit by a car this week? Get your hands off me, dude. Get your hands off me. Get your hands off me. Get the fuck off me. Get away from my car. Get away from my car. Get away from me. Oh. Oh. You see these people? Ow. Get off me. Let me get away. My dogs are trying to bite me. You people are watching. You people are watching. Hands behind your back. No, I did nothing wrong. I did nothing wrong. No, leave my dog alone. No, stop. Hands behind your back. Hands behind your back. Hands behind your back. No. Put your hands behind your back. Luna, put your hands behind your back. Put your hands behind your back. Don't. Come on. Stop. Come on, baby. Hands behind your back. Stop. Come on. I got him, Draco. Hands behind your back. No. Hands. No. No. Come on, bud. Put your hands behind your back. No. No. Mommy. 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 Give me this arm. Mommy. Mommy. No.
Help us help you.
No.
Help us help you.
No.
Hands behind your back. Come on, brother. Come on, buddy. Just put your hands behind your back.
No.
That way we can go check on your dog and make sure they're okay.
No.
Hands behind your back, man. Come on, my man.
I did nothing wrong.
Just put him behind your back.
He backed me into here. No.
Austin, please.
No.
Please just cooperate, sir. We got the dogs. The dogs are safe.
No.
Just give us your hand, okay? Give us your hand.
No, please.
Just give us your hand.
You got 10 officers for somebody
Please
with
give us your hand.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. Relax.
No.
He didn't do anything.
I can't breathe.
He didn't do anything.
Please. Please.
Guys, he didn't do anything.
You're hurting him. No. My wheels just cracked.
You guys, stand down.
My wheels just cracked. Please stop.
Why are you hurting him? He's injured. Stop hurting him.
I can't breathe. Come on, please stop. I can't breathe.
Why are you hurting him?
Oh, no.
You guys, give it back.
He just got hit.
I can't breathe.
Stand down. That's his. Guys, what is the charge? What is he even alleged to have done? He has a right to know what he's being charged with.
Just a little, just a little. Listen, please. Listen. No. I can't.
We'll stand you up, okay, so you can breathe.
Yes.
Bring your shoulders back so your lungs can open up. Open your arms up. Open up. Big deep breath. Big deep breath. There you go. See?
Why did you have to
He's
slam
got
him
12
down?
cops on a guy who is suspected of
Crossing a yellow
crossing
tape.
a police line?
I'm trying. Let me relax. Water. Water. What am I going to release God? Just back me into it. I ain't shut me down, bro. I didn't do anything wrong. I got hundreds. I got thousands of people that just saw that. I didn't choose.
Good job.
Oh, I can't.
Hey, you guys. He got hit by a car. You guys.
He needs to go
This
to the
is a
hospital.
medical issue.
He needs to go to the hospital. Oh my God. He got hit by a car.
I can't.
I hope you're going to a hospital. You should be calling an ambulance. Great.
This is bullshit. This is fucking bullshit.
Mr. Bates. Other side of the tape, please.
This is bullshit.
Other side of the tape, please.
This is bullshit.
Other side of the tape.
This is bullshit.
Mr. Bates, other side of
This
the
is
tape, please.
bullshit.
Paul.
This is bullshit. This is bullshit.
Okay. Okay, comment? I guess I would first advise that, not to talk about the thing that we discussed, the prior policy, but other than that, comments?
Sorry, I was checking with the procedure, you went through the cycle of.
Yes, we've gone through the section used.
Does anyone, have a motion, constructive motion that they wanna raise?
I guess I agree with the vice chair, but only to the, if we include the specific policy complaints in the comprehensive review, that comprehensive review, I imagine, will have to touch on several different policies. From the point of view of, efficiency and budgetary realities, I would think it would be less time consuming to address the specific policy complaints that have been given us, but
So would we want to create a
a
policy
new policy, yeah,
that covers the homeless encampments? I would think we might.
right.
That
So
would be a good work product of.
So it's a two-step process, I guess. The first step is to do a comprehensive review of the policies that are relevant for these policy complaints, as well as specifically requesting these documents having to do with the operation of this June 4th incident. Which would then lead up to the construction of a new policy related to homeless encampment clearances.
I would think that this wouldn't, if we went forward, that it wouldn't supersede the specific policy that you had offered to look into about.
Yeah.
Because to me, that does seem pretty discreet.
I agree.
Well,
I don't know if
I
that's a-
guess I would say, I don't think supersede, but I think to be efficient, it should be the same group of people looking at all of those, including what you just voted on. So it might require like revisiting the approach to that one. So I guess I would share that my view, and again, I'm late, I don't know what's happened. I don't know, Hansel, if you've already put forward a proposal or had some discussion about pending policy reviews that you're gonna have to drop because of staffing issues. Has that conversation happened or?
They're gonna come back next week with the full list that we can help prioritize for them.
Okay, so maybe, I mean, we can take some action today that enables us to have this conversation in light of that one next week. Because I'm happy to volunteer to work on it. I do think we need staff support. And so we just need to be willing to prioritize the reviewing the specific complaints that have come in regarding the encampment issue, and then the broader, like, what should the policy be for the city of Berkeley around encampment clearances?
Okay, I want to make clear though that I volunteered to do that discrete piece of it, and I would not be willing to do the more comprehensive
Yeah.
thing.
There's also the barrier, which is that we can't include it because whoever would be, if we were to include it, everyone else would have to recuse. So, I mean, we can like discuss the broader encampment suite policy without focusing on 426, and I think we would still cover what you're talking about. Am I sure, right?
Yeah, I because I wasn't here, I don't exactly know what you're talking about, this issue with, but
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
One thing I guess I'm not totally clear on is, right? Are we, in examining the sweep policy, is it the police? If it's been, if there is, I guess it's like if there is some kind of lawful violation that they can point to do, like, is that what we're looking at, like whether it is lawful to actually do a sweep? Or is the question the manner in which a sweep is conducted, if it's been determined if it's lawful?
Yeah, the second.
The second.
Okay.
Procedurally, how would it be carried out? The operational procedures, the policy governing. Which there currently is no written policy around it.
Right. It feels to me like the proposal though is more about the former, in that it's saying, or I guess I can't remember which policy about now, but the proposal was, should there be some kind of accountability for commanders who have cops going out and doing something that is essentially like it's not lawful for them to do.
The unlawful part was not providing notice. Not the fact of the sweep itself, which would, in giving notice, would have been a procedural step.
Right, although, I mean, arguably, like, I mean, I don't know, but I mean, someone else could post a notice, right? It's not like the police have to post a notice, right?
I think that's the question of whose responsibility is it? Which we don't have the answers to.
So we also have the Department of Public Works involved here, right? And our purview is just the police, it's not, we don't have any other authority over it.
Yeah, I mean, there's the notice issue, there's the use of weapons, less lethal weapons during these, what's the policy around that?
Storage of property.
Storage of property. Arrests of people who are at the encampment. I mean, like, there's a lot of intersecting policies. One question that we haven't asked is, there were a lot of requests for mentions of reports that community members had already gathered. Were you able to gather those from them?
Reports?
Yeah, the last meeting, some attorneys were here and were talking about how they had reports they were willing to provide us for additional background. Did you?
We did submit the Dropbox link. I can recall immediately videos and photographs, and you recall if you received any reports?
No reports, okay. I mean, I guess the question that the complainant raised was, do we need anything additional at the outset before if we were to conduct a policy review? Do we need additional reports, from the department?
What do you mean by reports?
I think the complainant specifically mentioned a few in their actual complaint. They were talking about the after action report and also the operational
Yes,
report, right?
documents related to the operation, including the operational plan, after action report, and any relevant communications from the city. So I would assume that that would be encompassed in some broader review. I don't know who we intend to do this review.
Okay. Okay, but I think Vice Chair also said she's willing. I will do it with her if no one else wants to step in.
I don't want to draw off the floor.
Okay, good. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
Just one quick charter note about the charter does require all departments to cooperate,
Yes.
with the, so.
Yeah. If we're investigating a policy, all departments have to cooperate, right? So I'm going to do it with her. So I mean, if everyone wants to.
I'm happy to chip in. I mean, I do think this is important and worth reviewing.
Okay.
So I'd like to be involved.
You want to be involved too? Okay. We got 3 people, maybe 2.5, with me being a half. Okay.
Some public some public member would step up.
Yeah, I guess that would be my request too, is, there's a difficulty with accessing, like if we were to access confidential.
Oh, that's true,
We couldn't, but anything public, yeah. Okay, so with that, I guess like, I haven't got a motion.
No, I don't actually know. I'm curious what the motion is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing.
Oh, I thought you were about to make one, Randy.
I'm waiting in my head.
Okay, I guess I'll make a motion for us to direct. Well, is it a subcommittee or are we gonna do a subcommittee? Is that? A subcommittee to review creating a policy around homeless encampment sweeps. Chaired by Vice Chair Wilson and staffed by Randy, Board Member Wells and me.
May I make a friendly amendment?
Oh, sure, go ahead.
And I would add to that. I think that's great, and then I would say, and this review that the subcommittee will do will incorporate these policy complaint requests. In other words, we don't want to lose sight of what it was that prompted this in terms of the operational plan for that particular incident, and what was the other one?
Sure.
But not the part about right to record, because I've taken that on.
Right, I guess I want to make the motion clear because we've had issues, so what additional? What additional piece would you like to bring to the motion?
I want to make that the overall review will include specifically responses to these 2 policy complaints, not the prior one, because I'll be doing that.
Okay.
So you mean the 2 complaints, 004 and
004 and 005.
Okay.
So I just would ask again, like, does it make sense, or should Kitty be on our subcommittee? Because part of what we're going to do, right, is look at best practices, what other jurisdictions have done, policy wise. Like, does it make sense to have you doing this standalone review, Kitty?
It may not make sense, but I really can't be part of that broader subcommittee because of the amount of work that the regulations committee has been taking. I just can't commit to being a full-fledged member of that.
Okay.
But I will say, I do think that there is a dotted line in, I think, information sharing between our subcommittee and her work, where that information makes sense.
Like, I don't see them as totally separate and independent, and I don't necessarily think they need to be all under one subcommittee, but I think as we have learnings and findings, we can share them with you.
Sure, I mean, there's no reason the four of us can't, I mean, four of us, three of us,
3.5.
how many of us can talk to each other?
With current, so there's currently 8 appointees, 4 of them would be 5. So maximum.
Four of us can discuss, yeah.
All right.
We can communicate.
Okay, I want to renew my motion with the understanding that we're incorporating the policy reviews that were presented to us. Motion to create a subcommittee, staff chaired by Vice Chair Wilson, staffed by Board Member Wells and me, to review the creation of a homeless encampment policy. Yeah.
I second.
Okay.
Okay. Now, it's the roll call vote. Board Member Calvino,
Yes.
Board Member Lethwich,
Yeah.
Board Member Williams,
Yes.
Board Member Wells,
Yes.
Board Member Evans,
Yes.
Board Member Charco,
Yes.
Vice Chair Wilson,
Yes.
and Chair Cayetano.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Okay, great. Let's keep going. And, with that, I have to excuse myself. Oh, I apologize. Please. Thank you for being here. And thank you to all the community members who participated, and contributed videos, for us to review. It's much appreciated. Thank you. Okay, moving on. To 9D, discussion action on the proposed rescission of the police equipment and community safety ordinance. Director?
Yes, so, per the direction from last meeting, we've been coordinating, with the police department, specifically, Arnold, yeah, director of, strategic.
Spam.
Yeah. Spam?
Spam.
Okay.
Strategic planning and, yeah, I don't know, it's just, yeah, I don't want to say it's veterans.
These were the policy and data person for the police department. But he came by, we had a conversation, and it was helpful for me because I was able to now understand a little bit more about the administrative burden element. And we had a preliminary discussion about what, elements, we can keep in the spirit of it. Of ensuring that it still have oversight, so what we discussed is, to memorialize and, to workshop something sent to the chair and vice chair, and then, be ready for the July 9th meeting, to give something to the public safety committee.
And just procedural reminder, last meeting, the board, voted, look, can you clarify, do you have the motion on record? I want to make sure that the board members are aware of this.
Should be in our minutes. Yeah, so the motion to request that the director with support from the chair and vice chair collaborate with Berkeley Police Department to develop a recommendation for presentations to the Public Safety Policy Committee. The recommendation will seek to reduce or eliminate duplicate reporting requirements already covered by state law while preserving the unique and important elements of the ordinance that require local review. The director, chair, and vice chair will present the recommendation to the full board for vote prior to the Public Safety Policy Committee July meeting.
Okay. So I guess 2 points of clarification on that. The first is that this item will come back to the board for final approval. Before we actually make a recommendation that we will then present to the subcommittee. The second is that the motion, had a substantive recommendation to eliminate duplicative reporting and retain substantive, but we still have to coordinate with the department. And we haven't figured out as a board what to do if we have disagreement, if we don't see eye to eye on what is duplicative and what is substantive. So that's something that the board will decide next time. And we're hoping that these discussions between the director and the department, and also us, the chair and the vice chair, are able to iron out some of those ambiguities in order for the board to actually have a clear view of what we're voting on next time around. Any comments on this? There's no action per se right now, but I open to comments on what we're doing.
I just want to make sure that, because I think it wasn't so clear perhaps in the motion, although maybe I was distracted and didn't notice it, but I feel strongly that the ordinance itself should not be rescinded, but that the reporting requirement be such that there not be duplication, so that, what is it, 481? AB 481, yeah. That the report can be one report, which includes things that are in the ordinance, but not that we should rescind the ordinance. So there are two things. One is the ordinance and the other is the reporting requirement. So I would hope that that's what we're doing. But you haven't met with your department yet.
The director has met with Arla.
So then that's the subject matter expert that they provided to us to have these conversations, but then when.
In terms of running.
But we understood the motion the way you explained.
Okay, any other thoughts or comments before, because if you have any thoughts before we meet with the director and then also you know, the decision maker on BPD, you can let us know.
What are your thoughts about what happens if we don't reach agreement?
Well, then it would come back to the board for a vote on, like, it would be more of a line item vote on what the board would have to discuss and decide which one was substantive and which one was duplicative, where we have differences. If that makes sense.
And that would happen at the next meeting.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have gotten community member input, and I told them that the next meeting would be the substantive one, where we discuss like in detail. And so I'm just flagging for the board members that it would be, you know, a more line item discussion. And I'm hoping that what we prepare will set us up for success there. Okay. Moving on, I guess, no action. Okay, 9E, discussion and possible action regarding BPD surveillance acquisition report and proposed use policies for external fixed surveillance cameras. Block safety condor video cameras. Director.
I yield to our policy analyst to get us caught up in how we got here and then fill in any gaps.
Yeah, and for your reference, the detail memo that we prepared is on page 44 of the packet. We get it on the presentation. Yeah, next slide, please. Just a brief overview of what we'll be covering is the background on the board's history with fixed surveillance, the approval requirements presented within the ordinance, and the items for PAB consideration that we highlighted. Just again, the historical background, this particular surveillance acquisition report was presented to the June 18th. But the PAB had previously reviewed this item back in, I want to say it said 2023, where concerns have been raised about the limited evidence supporting fixed cameras for general oversight or traffic investigations. And one of the other concerns was that we had noted that there wasn't effective crime reduction from CCTV, and that in order for it to be effective, you needed an extensive coverage and monitoring that was essentially 24/7, which was beyond BPD's capacity. And as part of the recommendations that were presented was that if future recommendations were brought to fixed cameras, that they be evidence-based in line with council's intent to limit the use to criminal investigations. Just an overview of the approval requirements for BMC 299. Anytime that surveillance technology wants to be, or anytime surveillance technology wants to be procured by the city manager must go to the city council. As part of that process, has to come towards PAB for review, and once presented with the acquisition report, we have 30 days to respond. The acquisition report includes tech descriptions, the purpose, for the acquisition, the location will be installed, any potential impacts to civil rights, slash liberties, how the data will be used, the cost, and any, alternatives that could be, considered. And the use policy, includes approved uses, data rules, access control, safeguards, and so on. One previous question that had come up by the board was what's the difference between the acquisition, or rather the surveillance technology policy and the use policy? And the use policy is the one that officers reference when it comes to, their use of the operational day to day. The items that we applied for PAB consideration in this, review, was that the cameras that are being proposed have new capabilities that weren't contemplated with the original board review and council approval. Particularly, we're highlighting that this new iteration has pupil detecting capabilities, something that the previous model didn't have. As a matter of fact, it was a hardware installment that BPD had intentionally opted out of purchasing. And of course, or rather, that aspect of it's also AI driven. And it's now compatible with the AOPR system, so it could serve as an extension of the AOPR sort of net and current system through the Converse system.
Is there any way to make that bigger?
Could we make that bigger on that? Yeah, there we go.
Oh, wonderful.
So with that in mind, the new capabilities, one aspect that we really wanted to flag was that the policies remain unchanged from the previous iteration despite these new capabilities in the cameras. Next slide, please. As I noted in the previous slide, one of the key components is that these new fixed cameras are now compatible with the AOPR systems. So in theory, if officers get a hit on the AOPR cameras, they can now pull up, or they would be able to pull up the Condor system, which is flock software to counter fixed cameras in LPR, and be able to essentially determine what cameras are in that proximity to be able to track the vehicle. And it uses AI software. That could be filtered to search particular makes and models of vehicles through the fixed cameras. So with that aspect, one of the recommendations that we bring forward is that the board focus on making sure that the policies are updated to reflect those new capacities should council wish to improve them. And I'll pass it back to the director for anything I might have missed in this presentation.
Yeah, and if you've been tracking some reporting, there's a lot of concern about Flock's dragnet system when they're acquiring a lot of data and how other agencies have been utilizing that and who's getting access to that. There was an article that came out today, was it today? That ended the 25th. The headline is Flock will move states from national lookup tool after ICE and abortion searches revealed. So it seems like there's some consideration from Flock about how other entities are utilizing their data. So we just wanted to contextualize that because this is this particular vendor is different in that way than the previous vendor. And I don't know that there's a full consideration for the capabilities. The technology acquisition is the proposal is relatively the same. That hasn't changed, but I think more concern that we want to flag is the vendor's capabilities.
I didn't really catch what you're saying, the difference in this new vendor, the new vendor being Flock. Yeah, so the difference is?
The previous vendor, Edgeworth, their system, I guess the broader connection is that the Edgeworth system wasn't compatible with ALPR, so they were standalone systems. If you wanted to use an ALPR system through Edgeworth, that's hardware that had to be purchased specifically through Edgeworth. There isn't that cross integration that Flock allows with its ALPR systems. In terms of the ability of using the AI software is a standard feature within the cameras. Edgeworth also required additional hardware to be able to do that. So once the cameras were purchased, you had to make an additional purchase for it to be able to have that capability, which wasn't at the time, it wasn't something that council and the BPD had opted to purchase. Versus here, not only is that a standard feature, but at the time, at least at this moment, I don't believe we received follow-up regarding whether those features could be turned off or not, to still comply with the previous use policy. So the capabilities of the camera when it comes to its compatibility with ALPRs, and the use of the AI, person detection, are the two big differences that we flagged. And even just being able to search for specific criteria on vehicles wasn't something that the previous cameras had contemplated.
When you say person detection, are you talking about ALPRs? Because obviously the fixed cameras, they're supposed to detect persons.
Yes, but the previous capability was if you record it, but it wouldn't flag it. We go back to the PowerPoint please, and specifically like us, like it would track you.
It's called people detection alerts. It identifies human presence without facial recognition.
Director, I read somewhere, or maybe you sent to us, that Flock. There's been some complaints about Flock, collaborating with ICE. Do you recall that? Is that right?
And I don't know if collaborating per se, but in the sense that they are there's been reports that they're accessing that data.
And like, do you have any more details on that?
Yeah, so there was a FOIA PRA request that, and I'm flanking out on the jurisdiction or even the outlet that did this, but they were tracking which departments were tapping into this data, and ICE was one of the ones that you can look at, because it's a network. So a lot of the different jurisdictions are utilizing Flock with a very popular vendor. So they can track the data across jurisdictions.
Right. So I guess like I had a conversation with community members, a meeting about this surveillance technology, and they raised some concerns that I could share with you guys. The first is that the information that is captured is stored on a cloud that is owned by Flock. Now, what my understanding from the chief's report to us, very detailed actually, is that Flock cannot provide that information without first informing the department, right? But they still are required, just like I guess we are, to hand it over when required by law. Like that's the big thing. But it's like there's a question of like storage in the cloud. That's the first question. The second question is what I asked the director to put together this chart on page 47, because the ALPR policy, which is new, has a 30-day retention delete policy, where you can only store data on the cloud for 30 days before it's automatically deleted, and you have to have specific criteria for when it's retained, like someone's being investigated, for example. And because of the ability of ICE to access that data by judicial warrant, they can't access data that's not there. And so one of the ways to prevent that is by having a 30-day policy. And the fixed camera surveillance policy does not have the same retention policy. It has 100, I believe it's 180 days. And so that there's a gap. So like if we were to, in our recommendation, I think that we should also analyze the differences between the fixed surveillance policy and the ALPR policy. The ALPR covered by Flock, the fixed surveillance camera, if it were to be adopted by Flock, we would flag all the differences in the current fixed surveillance policy because of these other considerations, if that makes sense. Does anyone have any questions about that? I mean, the chart is on page 47 through 49. There's also like third-party access, third-party data sharing, the bottom of 48. There is a specific limitation in the ALPR that it's not shared for immigration enforcement, but there's not in the fixed video surveillance camera. And so like, there's all these mismatches between the ALPR and fixed video surveillance that we should flag if, in our recommendation, if that's what the board wants, you know?
So what are we doing tonight?
Yeah, so in terms of what we're doing tonight, my suggestion would be to appoint someone from this board to come back at the next meeting with a solidified recommendation that we can vote on. And it would be a very compressed time frame. It would be, you would have to essentially submit it to the director's office by Friday or next Friday or Monday. And then we could vote on it at the next meeting. There's no proposal here, right? This is like background information for us to consider. But that would be my recommendation, and it's a great opportunity for people who don't have their hands full right now to get really involved in this, because there's a lot of community interests in this item. There was a lot of community interest in the ALPR item when it first came around, and that's like historical background that I don't know if you want to provide how much went into that now.
A lot went into that. I don't know. I mean, I have
Yeah,
file like that about ALPRs and fixed cameras.
right.
But I noticed also that the fixed cameras the data are available through public records requests. So people can make requests to get those fixed surveillance camera data, which shocked me. The other thing that's happened, and yeah, I think that's a good idea, John. But the other thing that surprised me is that we had brought up a concern about reproductive issues. And in addition to what the director mentioned in terms of ICE, there have been instances of people being tracked going to other states for abortions, for example, through the flock system, getting those data through the flock system. And that, we raised that concern originally to council, and they didn't include that in the they included the immigration concern, but they didn't include that for some reason. Anyway, yes, so we need a group of people, 2 people, 3 people to take it on.
I mean, it could just be one very passionate person.
One question I have, I'm sorry. We're getting new cameras, but the policy doesn't necessarily need to be updated, correct? It's something
That's right.
that is right. And so the question is, should it? Because now it can sync up with the ALPRs.
Yeah, I guess like one more step beyond that is, oftentimes we're not focused on policies, other people are not focused on policies, and because there's a ordinance that requires our review, this is an opportunity to present our views to a broader audience than would be otherwise. So there's like that consideration as well.
Right, but so, and the cameras, these new cameras have more bells and whistles. The current policy doesn't account for the fact that these bells and whistles could exist. So I guess, could it be the case that the existing policy, to the extent that we're worried about whatever, a more expansive use of these cameras, that the existing policy already protects us from that because it doesn't contemplate the use of these bells and whistles? Or am I not following it?
Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
Do you know what I'm saying?
Not quite, but maybe.
I guess I understand what you're asking, and my personal opinion, I would say no. I think the issue from the general public is an issue of privacy and security in a lot of different ways. Whether it's personal individual privacy, or whether it's what federal institutions have access to the data or not. And because the flock cameras have significant greater technology enhancement, I think it would behoove us to have a policy that takes into account what these additional technological enhancements are. to ensure that privacy, security, et cetera, is being taken into account. It's almost like doing our due diligence with
Right.
with newer cameras, with greater features or bells and whistles.
Yeah. Yeah, I see what you're saying. I guess it wasn't clear to me because it felt like some of what we were talking about, but actually it's less about the capabilities of the new cameras and more that we're just concerned that the existing policy isn't restrictive enough. Such, for example, how long it's, it's kept in the cloud. You mentioned 180 days versus what we had for ALP, and that's the existing policy. It's kind of irrelevant. It's just an opportunity to correct that because we're getting new cameras.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess like to be more technical about it, the use policy that the department proposed doesn't discuss changing existing policy to account for that. But the use policy that we recommend could account for that.
Yeah.
And so because there is a use policy, the use policy, it would be wrapped up into this surveillance. The use policy for the flock cameras would be wrapped into the surveillance cameras because they would be essentially overlapped.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the previous use policy this was drafted by who? The council?
So this is not a use policy, this is the policy manual, policy 1304. The use policy, I believe, is the use policy for the Edgeworth cameras, which is separate.
Uh-huh.
Who drafted it?
Well, so what we would be what would we be updating?
But I mean, we would make a recommendation for the use policy based on our review of the policy. Right here.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so who did the policy?
The department,
The police department.
the department approved by council.
Okay, got it.
Prior to.
The department came up with a policy and they sent it to council, council signed off.
Yes.
Actually,
And we also sent in our recommendations.
Which was not approved.
Some of which were not approved.
Okay.
Is this a Lexipol policy? That's my question.
Yes,
Yes.
Okay, so it's not really the department's coming up with.
Well, the department had a policy, I think that was put into Lexipol format.
Oh, okay. Does that answer your question? I mean, like, I'm not sure if we're on the same, like, if we're on the same page, okay,
I think I'm clear.
okay.
So the thing is to add in protections for privacy, given the new enhanced.
Well, right, but the thing that I was focusing on is, it seems like what we're also considering is potentially modifying the existing, it's almost like, even if we were getting the same cameras, we're considering, we're changing.
Well, there would be, yeah.
Right.
We would make recommendations.
Yeah.
But they're only recommendations in any case, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, Glenn, I guess back to my original question of, does anyone feel compelled to try to draft a recommendation?
The recommendation would need to be ready by, you said, next Friday.
So I guess next Friday would be a good deadline. The last deadline would be Monday, is that right?
So the chief says she needs to receive it on July 8th, because she's trying to get it to the July 22nd meeting.
Yeah.
So if it's not by then they go to a different process, it may not be part of the.
So I'm not worried about that. I guess what I'm worried about is what time would someone need to get it in time for our next meeting?
Oh, for the next meeting.
Yeah.
The July 3rd, we're gonna post this, we have a federal holiday, so. Thursday, July 3rd, we're gonna meet it.
Week from tomorrow.
So you couldn't take it by July 7th?
We could put it as a supplemental, I just
Yeah, okay.
don't know how exhaustive it will be, so whether that's ample time.
Okay. So July 3rd with July 7th, which is a Monday. Are you asking the question? Because you're interested?
I have interest, but I could not.
Okay.
Not commit to that.
What would you need in order to get there?
In the next week, more time, 24 hours in a day.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, part of it, so we're producing a recommendation.
Yes, it would need to be ready to go to submit to the Rules and Agenda Committee and for us to vote on.
And I'm hesitant to sign up for that,
Okay.
but that strength.
No,
You have to do that.
Okay,
Was this something staff could do?
I mean, we would have to ask them what their bandwidth is.
What is the ask?
Would you be able to come up with a proposal ready for us to vote on by next meeting? By proposal, I mean like, a letter ready to submit to the Rules and Agenda Committee on our recommendation per the ordinance.
We did some of the work preliminarily already, how do you feel? Yeah, we did.
Okay, would you feel really good about it if, board member Edmonds like stepped in for one day and helped?
Or if we submitted it and we had a liaison, I think that would be helpful too.
Okay,
So we capture the wishes of at least one board.
okay, how do you feel about being a liaison?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's we're still talking July 3rd. My only hesitancy is I know I've just got back from vacation and this is gonna be a busy next week, so it depends on how much input you need, like I'm happy to. Like, I wanna be a resource and also I wanna not overcommit to.
I mean, even any general guidance or impressions, I think that would help us, so we don't go this way or that.
Okay. I think, yeah, the reason I wanted to have two conversations was so that our conversation will help guide the recommendation and to make it easier on you.
And maybe we could just keep it short and simple. You know, that could, given the time constraints, just to try to keep it as concise as possible, we don't need some lengthy report.
I'm not a fan of lengthy reports, so. Is Vice Chair Wilson here? Is she?
Yes.
Oh, do you have anything you wanna add before we do anything?
Sorry, I'm having trouble with this. No,
That's okay.
No.
Okay, I just wanna make sure you're heard. Okay. Are you feeling good? You're feeling good? We'll get it done. Gonna get it done? Okay, and then, we can text too. Okay, alright. I'm your resource and you're their resource. Okay, alright. Let's get a motion. Yeah, let's get a motion.
Motion is to submit a recommendation.
It'd be like to direct the director's office to.
Okay, yeah. All right, motion to, for the director's office to submit a recommendation with support from myself.
Second. Great. Oh, yeah, do you have it?
No,
That's-
well, they needed fleshing out, but maybe not.
It's okay, yeah.
Okay, so the motion is to direct the LDPA to draft a recommendation to bring back to the PAB, right? With support from board member Edmonds. Fill in a few gaps, but, okay, I'm seeing, the confirmation there. So motion by board member Edmonds, second by board member Wells. Quick roll call vote, board member Calavita,
Yes.
board member Lethbridge,
Yes.
board member Williams.
Yeah.
Board member Wells,
Yeah.
board member Edmonds,
Yes.
board member Dozel Turco.
Yes.
Vice Chair Wilson
Yes.
and Chair Cayetano.
Yeah.
Motion carries, 8 votes yes, 0 no's.
Thank you. Okay, next, discussion action on BPD surveillance acquisition report and the proposed use policies for the replacement of jails, cameras and control panel. Question, was this, when was this submitted? When is this decided to be heard? Sorry, when is this set?
My understanding is we want to save the agenda. Yeah.
Here,
Looking it up right now, but I haven't been informed until last Thursday.
Okay. All right, well, let's get your presentation then. I was gonna,
So this one was one of the more. This one was a request we received more last minute in terms of our agenda preparation, so we didn't prepare people's memos we would have liked. But in our assessment of the materials, this request is very similar to the one that the board received, I want to say 3 months ago, regarding the animal shelter where they were upgrading their servers. And are they upgrading cameras? Sorry, one moment.
This seems pretty
It's
straightforward,
control
right?
panel.
Am I
Yeah,
missing
it's the control panel. And the server that they're upgrading.
did you have a specific recommendation in your memo?
No, I don't know that we can.
That for this one we did.
Okay, does anyone have any comments on this?
No.
No? No comments? Okay, if there's no comments, I'm gonna say we move on. Okay. Sound good? All right.
Yes.
Okay, moving on. To 9D, public comment.
Public comment. Okay, 100 moment, and then navigate through my names.
We currently don't have any community members present, so we're gonna go straight to our community members online.
Are there any of our virtual attendees that would like to provide public comment? Chair, at this time, we do not have any hands raised.
Okay, with that, let's go to number 11, closed session.
Yeah.
I think it's just update. Yeah.
I think they're gonna talk about the closures. They can speak as of the staffing.
Just general.
Oh, David. Yeah. You notice how,
we're still on the record, by the way.
oh, yeah.
We'll now be going into closed session. Vice Chair Wilson will be providing you closed session information. In the meantime, the webinar will continue. Audio and visual recording will stop. We're now live.
Okay. Board heard update on pending complaints and took no action. With that, get a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Great. Great.
Yes.